Game 7 of the World Chess Championship stayed true to form, as neither player could break down the other's defenses, and the game once again ended in a draw. With 3 whites in the final 5 games, can American Fabiano Caruana break through and take the lead? Or will world champion Magnus Carlsen continue the trend of great positions for black in this match? It's a battle of wills as the tension mounts day after day. Game 8 action, live from London, starts right now.
Hello and welcome back to Today in Chess World Championship Edition as we watch an epic match between Fabiano Caruana, the American challenger, and our reigning king, Magnus Carlsen. So far, the 2 best players in the world are deadlocked. 3.5 points for Fabiano Caruana and 3.5 points for Magnus Carlsen. And today, round 8, very well, maybe the day that someone strikes blood. I'm Jennifer Shahade. I'm here with Yasser Seirawan, and we predicted it before the round. This is going to be a big game, Yaz, and indeed, it looks like they're playing an open Sicilian.
Well, I will be elated if that's the case. And is it the case? This is fantastic. Okay, the Rosalimo was not bringing the bacon home for Fabiano. He had been playing bishop b5 and getting absolutely nowhere in the previous 3 games with white. So this is what I have been waiting for. d4 takes, knight takes d4. Now, Magnus's move 2, knight c6, is usually the prelude to the Sveshnikov Sicilian.
But d6 is still possible.
Of course,
We
as
need
is
to a classical
g6.
Sicilian.
But e7, e5, the Sveshnikov, one of the sharpest
That's what you're
Sicilians.
predicting.
That's what his move order suggests that he wants to play.
But we talked about that
would
earlier.
he put his whole world championship title on the back of the Sveshnikov?
There it is. E5,
and he's
knight to
done
d5.
it.
You were right, Yaz. Knight on d to b5. We've got a Sveshnikov.
Oh,
Party
my
time in
word.
round 8 of the World Chess Championship. It's Fabiano finally goes for the most testing line. Let's take a look at our format. Well,
wow.
we know that we have a 3-part time control. It's a best of 12 games. First player to 6.5 points wins the match. And no draw offers before Black's 30th. We've got a prize fund of over €1,000,000.
But it's all about the title, Jen, and the fame that comes with it. And the schedule?
The schedule, well, we see now the next few pairings, Caruana white in 3 games, including the one we're playing, and we can really start to understand why he said, go time, baby. If the match is deadlocked at the end, there will be tie breaks on November 28th. And here we have it, a mainline Sveshnikov. Oh, well, actually, we have a couple more moves.
Right. After knight b5, we did see the move d7, d6. Now, the sharpest variations all begin with the move bishop g5. Fabi tapped the brakes a little bit with this positional move, knight d5, a move, by the way, that has been favored by Magnus Carlsen himself, and they have reached this position after a trade of knights. All very theoretical still a very big strategic battle taking place. Let's switch over to Maurice Ashley for his take on Game 8.
Well, this is certainly fun, and this is not the only fun event going on. Of course, we've been following very closely the Women's World Championship match as well, and that one has in fact begun, and we have a result among these 2 great ladies, the Women's World Champion Zhu Wenjun of China against Katerina Lagno of Russia, and Game 1 was a fighting draw. Absolutely thrilling battle, many twists and turns in that crazy one. And so we will keep our eye on that as they go 4 games in that match. But if it's tied, Then they will go to a tiebreak format, which they've been doing so far in this knockout event. The best of 2 rapid games, then 2 blitz games, 10 plus 10. And if that doesn't produce a winner, then another 2 blitz games, 5 plus 10, and then sudden death Armageddon. I'm not sure about the 5 plus 10. I think it might be 5 plus 3, but we'll check on that, make sure about that. But then let's go to Game 8 history. Will it be the one? Well, let's note that of the 7 12-game World Championships that have been played, Game 8 has been the most cantankerous one. In fact, of the 7, 4 have produced decisive results. 2006, Topalov beat Kramnik with the black pieces, then one with the white pieces against Anand. Anand won with white in that same Game 8, and then Karyakin defeated Carlsen when he overpressed with white. So 4 victories, both white, 2 whites, 2 blacks. What's going to happen today? Well, if this opening is any indication, we might see that Game 8 fighting spirit belligerents come back yet again, as this is an exciting start to the round.
Absolutely, Maurice. It's just the opening that we've been ordering or wanting to order, because as much as we've enjoyed the hard-fought 7 game draws, they've been also at times tepid. The players haven't really got in there and challenged one another, and this is one of the most challenging opening Sicilian positions in the books. And the whole idea from White's point of view is he's created a center wedge with his pawn on d5, which also allows him on many occasions to use his queenside majority for a breakthrough. Now, Black also has his own central wedge, and he often uses his kingside majority for a breakthrough over there. So it's a battle, a strategically rich battle in store with some very nice tactical play too. So this is an opening that promises a lot.
Yeah, I mean, the round 8 statistics based on just the 7 matches might turn out to be prescient. Yeah,
absolutely.
This is as double-edged as it gets. And
Right.
Team Fabi, I'm loving the testing opening play,
Right.
but I also feel like this is something where Magnus could excel. So
Sure.
this is just really
It's
going to be a
double-edged
dramatic
stuff.
game, and I hope that you're all got your seatbelts fastened and have the rest of the morning and early afternoon clear
to share your day with us. Now the question is statistically, how does the opening break down in terms of the decisive games, and which side has the edge, the upper hand, and has Fabi or Magnus made a poor choice, statistically speaking? And to bring some of that, those figures to light, I'm going to really count on my buddy Maurice. Maurice, what's happening in this variation?
Well, we should point out, I mean, we do like the idea that the Sveshnikov is on the board.
Yep.
But without question, I mean, when I'm a player, E4 player, or was later in my career, and when I played against the Sicilian, particularly against the Sveshnikov, I didn't want to go into the bishop g5 lines, the crazy, wild possibilities that Black always had, these breaks with d5 and f5, the double pawns. I'd rather be Black in those positions, in fact. So this treatment, knight d5, is a way of getting away from those main crazy, unbalanced pawn structures. You look at this pawn structure, there is an imbalance naturally, as you see that White has established 4 pawns to 3 on this side, while Black has the majority on this side. And there is, because of that, there will be rich play. There's no doubt about that. There's stuff that's going to happen in this game. But it's not like the crazy open line Sveshnikovs. Those are completely wild, fighting over the d5 square, breaks, double pawns on f6, etc. So that said, this position, normally Black will have to face against c4 as a treatment, sometimes c3 as a treatment. This is more main line. The move a4 is the secondary move that White can play for as he tries to bind this side of the board. And I will tell you that without question, this is something that Fabi decided as they were thinking about the Sveshnikov. They must have been thinking about it a while when they realized that Magnus might play the Sveshnikov when he was playing the move knight to c6. And they thought, what variation do we play that is manageable? That is something that we can look at very deeply and sidestep the majority of his preparation, because his preparation clearly is going to go for all those mainline craziness. So how do we sidestep the majority of his preparation and then add our own wrinkle that he's going to have to think about at the board? So again, that word, that phrase that Vichy Anand used about information, who has the superior information. I forget exactly how he termed it. What was that term he used? Yaz or Jennifer, if you can help me. It was information. It's like an information deficit. We'll remember it.
Right.
But the idea that you don't know what the other person is going to play, and then once you do know what the other person is going to play, how do you get superior information in knowing that you can play A4 like he did here, and Magnus doesn't know which move you're going to play, and then you can prepare very, very deeply. So I suspect he'll pause here. What is actually going on? Has he moved after A4?
No, he still have the same position.
Actually,
A4,
no. We have seen several
B7.
moves in the game.
Sorry.
Bishop E7, Bishop E2, and castles.
Bishop E7, Bishop E2, castles. Well, quick play by the players after this opening moves with A4. It's going to be interesting, guys. It's black for choice coming down the board with his pawns on this side. White looking to break through on this side, getting C5, etc. This is good stuff. Fighting chess, to be sure. The most fighting, probably, of all the games that White Fabi has had so far.
Absolutely. And Maurice, a quick question for you. When that move A2, A4 was played, that strikes me as the secondary move behind C2, C4,
right.
C2, C4, the main move?
C4 is definitely the main move, yeah, by far.
Yeah. So A4, a little bit off the beaten path.
But still a standard.
Yeah.
Way,
no question.
A known way, yeah. Not the main line when you play knight D5 and knight B8, but because knight B8 is not the only move. Knight E7 is another move, but knight B8 when you play like the C4 is the normal, but A4 is certainly a very popular response.
And in both cases, you want to put your knight behind a pawn rather in case of A6, right?
Right.
So similar ideas.
But statistically, what's the score, expected score value of A4 over, say, C4?
We don't get, all of it you have to drill deep down. You don't get just like a generalized statistic, and it doesn't really help you, especially in the main lines where typically the variations are going to be very close. Right.
Yeah.
The results are going to be very, very close in the main line, so black's okay. That's why you diverge and you play a move. But still, then you start getting, when you start diverging, you start playing moves that are less popular, less principled, and played by players who are not the elite of the elite of the elite, much more so as they try to avoid the main lines, and C4 certainly being the big main line. But as it stands, Bishop E7, which he did play, has scored very well. Bishop to E2, castles, and castles. This position has been seen quite a bit, and we have 59 games where F5 was played immediately. That's a very nice sample size with move F5. Gelfand himself has been in this position. And the move knight D7 also played many times, 54 times. And the move A6 also played 44 times. So no general consensus by black as to what the correct approach is right now. They've tried different moves and have fairly decent results as I'm looking at these statistics. Even the move Bishop F5 has been played as well, and it has been played, well, just a few times. That probably would not be the sample size we want to use because it's only been played 3 times. But the key moves here, F5, getting the pawns rolling, knight D7, just simple development, but eventually F5 will happen, and A6, kicking out the knight right now. Normally the knight goes to A3, tries to get this pawn storm himself on this side, having restrained black completely. So interesting double-edged battle.
Well, yes, Maurice. Okay, so to me, the difference between F5 and A6 is that if you play F5, does White play C4 right away?
White has different options here. The big move is F4, shutting down these pawns from going anywhere. So, F4, by far is the right strategy.
So it might transpose anyway, because if A6, you're still playing knight A3 probably, right?
Probably knight
A3. So if you don't play C4 anyway, some of these lines could end up coming to the same conclusion.
Right. Oh, many, many times they're transpositional.
Exactly.
I suspect that F7, F5, major move, and that knight D7, not necessarily a prerequisite to lead with F5, but I can imagine that you play f5 knight d7 next, or you play knight d7 first and then f5 next. So a lot of transpositions will probably get you back to these types.
So to get back to this key moment where he played a4, White wants to try to use the queenside expansion, the better space he has on the queen side after having that pawn on d5.
That's right.
So he wants to be able to meet a6 with a more graceful move that doesn't hold back his pawns. And that's why these two ideas of a4 and c4 make sense, because then when you get kicked back, you can slide your knight back into c3. But I have to say, I echo Maurice's sentiments in that when I played the Open Sicilian, knowing that I'm attacking on the queen side rather than on the king side, it felt a bit more like a King's Indian type position to me. I wasn't that comfortable with it.
As what?
So Sveshnikov was the one opening that I gave the kibosh to. I said, when they play knight c6, I can play bishop b5 or c3, and then I'll play against all the other Sicilians. If d6, e6.
Oh, you'll play your Open Sicilians. And
well, e6 actually can transpose to it as well. But d6, I would play the Open Sicilian, which was the most common way to get the Sicilian.
That's right.
And Accelerated Dragon, I'd play for the Open Sicilian. But against knight c6, I'd often go the other way, because you're, instead of being the one attacking on the king side, you're the one attacking on the queen side.
That's
right.
So
the character of the game is very, very different.
As a 1e4 player,
exactly,
you wanted to attack your opponent's king. You didn't want to see him attacking your king. And if you play this positional line at the Sveshnikov, you're reacting on the king side and you're pressing on the queen side, which is not necessarily what you, a natural-born e4 player, wanted to do. You wanted to attack on the king side.
And I played both of them, though, and because I think these positions are nonetheless extremely rich, so they're very valuable to play.
Yes.
With the bishop g5, you get a similar story, though, with c4 and bishop g5.
Right.
But in both cases, or knight d5 and bishop g5, in both cases, it's black who's playing for these f5 and king side pressure.
Right.
So I find it a really great choice by Fabi in general, though, to play something more testing than the Rossolimo, and knowing that his team has probably spent an entire week on this, right?
Oh, absolutely.
It's been a week
no
since,
question. No question.
We're now at November 18th and 19th, and the match started on the 9th with c5, so literally 10 days have passed that Fabi's team has been able to work on the Sicilian.
Yeah, and my guess is that well prior to the match, that Fabi's team mainly concentrated on e5 defenses on move 1 for Magnus. That is to say that the Sicilian, yes, it was on the horizon and on the radar, so to speak, but not their main defense that they prepared for. I'm sure they were looking at Spanishes and Ruiz.
Otherwise, we would have gotten this on game 6, perhaps, or Fabi's last white. And that's what I thought, that maybe it was going to be his third white, and instead it's his fourth white. But the same principle. It's kind of like you're looking at the watch, and the match is ticking down, and you're like, okay,
right,
time for someone to get something with white.
Exactly, exactly. It's time to press. And again, I mean, with each progressive draw, the drama in the match just keeps ramping up, and who's going to blink first and to produce some fireworks, because at this point, if somebody wins a game, nobody's going to have a chance to catch up. Now, of course, having said that, in 2016, the previous World Championship, Game 8 was decisive. Magnus lost, but he won Game 10 to take it into tie breaks. But it's getting really close. There's only 5 more games to go.
And the Magnus was pressing in so many of those games that I certainly didn't feel like it was over once Karyakin won. But this match, like Anand said on the air yesterday, you get more of a sense that, not that it's over, but it feels more over than it did in Karyakin Carlsen.
Right.
Like if somebody wins a game because they're playing so well.
Yeah, they're so evenly matched.
And the idea of somebody just being able to neutralize in the final 4 games doesn't seem far-fetched.
It's not outlandish.
No, and I did want to repeat a tweet from Anish Giri, who says that, nonsense aside, it was a good result for Fabi to get 2 potentially tough consecutive black games behind him. Time to ask the boys if there's finally any news in the Rossolimo. Right. And apparently the boys said no.
Thankfully. And by the way, in this theoretically awkward position where it seems to me that both f7, f5, and knight on b8 to d7, as Maurice explained, have been equally played, Magnus did choose for the move f7, f5 at once, and instead of playing f2, f4, trying to fix the center is what I want to say there. We saw the move c2, c4 expanding on the queen side by Fabiano. What I mean by fixing the center, you see that these pawns on e5 and f5, black has ideas like knight to d7, e5, e4, knight to e5, and f5, f4, with a very aggressive attack on the king side. So it's very often in white's interest to try to blockade or fix the pawns in the center and the king side with a move like f4, e4, bishop e3. This would really play very, very nicely into white's hands. Also, now that this knight on b5 has not yet been kicked backwards, this early e5, e4 is very helpful because now the knight could swing back to the central square d4, eyeballing the e6 as well as f5 pawn. So f2, f4, we understand why that move was popular, but that was not Fabi's choice. He did go for c4. Over to you, Maurice.
Did he go for c4, bishop d2?
I've got f5 on my board.
f5 bishop d2 though was the move by Bob.
f5 bishop. Let's see.
Yeah, here we see the live board up on the screen.
No, it wasn't f5 bishop d2. It was bishop d2 f5 a5. Isn't it black to move now?
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah.
I had the,
so it was bishop d2.
The wrong moves.
Correct. Bishop d2 was played first, then f5, and then a5 by Fabi. It is now black's turn.
f5,
right?
bishop to d2.
So this is important to note.
a5, yeah.
Very important to note, and why. So let's just drill deep a little bit more into this position. The move knight d7, we mentioned there are a couple of other moves, f5, a6. Knight d7 is also one of the main moves. This move, knight d7, was played by Gelfand. I mentioned that name because Gelfand played his world championship match against Anand, and in that match, they also went into Rossalimos, if you remember that very cleanly. So that's something that everyone knew that's what Gelfand did. So in 2012, Nakamura had to play against Gelfand, and he got a Sveshnikov, and so he decided to also avoid the main lines against Gelfand because he didn't want to see Gelfand's preparation. Well, it turns out that as he avoided, he played exactly this way. And in this position, he played king to h1, delaying a move, preparing to play the move f4 if f5 was played. The game went f5, f4, a6, knight a3, and then e takes f4, taking it in a completely different direction, eventually putting a knight on e5. Matter of fact, I'd like to go down the moves just a little bit because after bishop f4, knight e5, queen d2 was played in this position, and then bishop d7. I'm jumping ahead a little bit. Let me just get that right. Yes, queen d2, and then bishop d7. That's right, queen b4, and rook b8, not giving white any targets at all on this side, guarding the b pawn. And then he prepared this maneuver, which is what I get to, a5, queen b3, knight g6, and after the bishop dropped back, b6, creating this pawn structure where it's very difficult for white to get anything on this side. You notice the pawns are very much blockaded, so white just doesn't have any energy on that side, although he does have squares to work with, but this bishop is guarding all the business squares. So he used this position. He ended up winning the game. It was a sharp game. You look at the position, you can tell it's a sharp position, but this is how it proceeded. White didn't get the play he wanted on the queen side, that aggression. So later, if we switch to another game of import, it's a game between Oparin and Gelfand. Grandmaster Oparin played this way, bishop d2. By the way, my database, I only found 4 games in the line, bishop d2. 4 out of all those games in a position. And bishop d2 played twice by Oparin against Gelfand. 1 a draw, 1 a win against Gelfand we're talking about. And we are updating to this year, to 2017. It was a rapid game nevertheless. A6 was played immediately in that game. Very important to note. A6 was the move played. And he tried, to blockade that side, but after knight c4, b6, f4, very aggressive, bishop a6, knight e3, bishop b7, and now bishop to c3, initiating an attack in this direction. He went on to win a very nice game, did Oparin, against Gelfand, who is a specialist in the line. And you notice that f5 is a bit of a problem trying to play because a capture and then a capture on that square. The move order that he used, also the idea of trading off light square bishops, would certainly favor white in this position. So this is the nuance that Fabi went down, dug into, went to look for, and said, you know what? let's avoid all the main stuff. If he plays like this, let's play this way. But let's make sure we get our expansion on the queen side. And now we're current with this position. Bishop E2 castles, knight D7, bishop to D2. And now after F5, this move, A5, not giving black any chance whatsoever to fully blockade this side. And that's an important distinction in this position, in that he didn't play F4 to stop black's expansion here. He quickly played A5. That means we are fully in Fabiano's preparation. Fully, because all these moves are very natural. This plan is new. And Carlsen sitting there, having seen preparation from game 2 that he ducked, from game 6 or game 7, was it game 7 that he ducked as well, right? His second white in a row. Game 7 that he ducked. He's now seen Fabi again throw out new preparation. What happens now? He can't really duck it because it's white doing it to him. He has to look at this position afresh. This is certainly a challenging move, the move A5.
Wow. Okay. Thank you, Maurice. I'm still trying to get my mind around it myself. I remember, I think it was from the Singfield Cup, where it was a game of Shaq Mamidarov's, where he had such structure. Remember, he went G7, G6 at a certain moment because he didn't know really what to do, and then he followed it up later with G6, G5. I'm still trying to understand why black has delayed A6 and booting the knight back to A3, and can Magnus take advantage of the fact that he hasn't included the move A6? So it's a little bit awkward for me. So I'm really thinking that there's
Knight F6?
Well, there's, yeah, knight F6 is certainly a move. I didn't want to interfere with my bishop coming to G5 or bishop F6. So I was thinking more like knight C5. So the idea here is, of course, I'm eyeballing the square
B4, knight E4.
B4, knight E4, and I'd be very happy to eliminate the dark square bishop if you would allow it. On the other hand, I'm asking white, are you really going to expand with C4, and maybe on a good day, for example, C4, bishop D7, maybe I'm thinking about capturing this knight.
But instead we have the move A6.
Immediately. Okay, so at any moment, the last 3 or 4 moves, Magnus could have played A6 at his whim and forced the knight back to A3.
But he could have only done it. But the point is with this is you do it and then you blockade that side, as we saw Gelfand do. And this is important to note.
Is that after A6, knight A3, you follow it up with A5.
With A5, and you don't have to worry about this A pawn going down the board. White has successfully placed the pawn on A5, so now B6 is weak for a long term. That's something that at least white pretends he wants in these positions, is to get this weakness on B6 and try to use it. So from this position, we have, I'm a little bit ahead. Oh, the move knight F6, by the way, you've got to think about this move, bishop to E3, because the A pawn hangs, and suddenly if you move it, then bishop to B6 shows up, and again, that weakness of the B6 square plays a role. So I'm going to go back a couple of moves. Again, also your move after A5, if you play knight C5, B4, knight E4, bishop E1. And again, the threat is F3. Your knight has no real future. Is going to be chased over to this side of the board, maybe to F6, where it could have gone to in one move. What's your argument that you liked by playing B4 with tempo, because F3 is coming now. And so that's why Magnus, in this position, had to figure out exactly what to do, or what should he do. But he played the move A6, which Fabi probably looked at and thought was not a good idea in this kind of position. His knight now has a path to B6 if this knight moves off of the square. So this is a very challenging formation. White can say he's successfully done what he wanted. In fact, black just acquiesced to the control of the B6 square. Will he himself play something like B6 or B5 and force a capture, as we've seen in many Sicilians, and try for a counterplay on that side as well? White's pawns are going to go down the board, so that's quite a dangerous idea. But to White's eyes, he's been successful in getting what he wants out of this opening, this weakness on this side, and he's now played knight A3 on the board. Expect to see more expansion on the queen side by White with this button on A5 playing a restricted role.
And it looks like Fabi's making all his moves instantly, as expected. He's been preparing for this for 10 days.
Yeah, you think he's well prepared.
But who do you like? I mean, obviously from a preparation point of view, knowing that Fabi is in his prep and Magnus is surprised, I love Fabi. But in terms of the position itself, I'm confused. I'm not sure who I like. Well, who do you like?
I like white. And the reason why is, unlike yourself, who are one E4 player, I'm an English opening player, but I also took up D4, and I like the white side of the King's Indian.
So, of course, you like that.
I always like
But if you ask Gary or brought Fischer back from the dead,
they would say, give me black, right?
Okay.
So it's a stylistic matchup. And for myself, I always like playing on my opponent's weak squares. And right now, we're going to see B6 square being hit very hard by Fabi. The question that I would have for Maurice is, it's quite clear that Fabi wants to stick his knight on the C4. And if there's only one issue that white has in the position, is that the pawn on D7, on D5, pardon me, doesn't have completely full or adequate protection. So for example, knight F6 hits the pawn, and I don't think you can play knight C4. I think I can just take that pawn on D5 and be a happy camper. And if after knight F6, I'm assuming white doesn't want to play the move C4, because then, well, now the knight on A3 is offside, and it's not quickly getting to the B6 square. So the question I would have for you, Maurice, is after the move knight F6, how does white juggle the things that he wants? He wants his knight to C4, but he doesn't want to give up his D5 pawn either.
What's bishop E3 here? Just is
bishop
that a pawn
E3
stack?
Immediately.
Queen A5.
Queen takes A5.
Knight C4.
Wow, super double
knight
edge.
C4. No, knight C4 you can take on D5.
It's still, is it 100%? Probably it's not. It is two pawns after all, right?
It is two.
I mean, I could even sacrifice an exchange if I didn't.
Correct.
I don't think I don't think bishop E3 is what you wanted to allow. So knight F6, maybe the bishop has to just drop back and play possum for a moment or two before you get to put your knight on B6.
Bishop B4 is another idea, which is a little unusual, but that's really specifically trying to get the knight to B6 here.
That is certainly trying to get the knight to B6.
Specifically, like that's mainly the plan, because the bishop is in the way of the pawns from that square. This move, wow.
Well, it's funny because normally the bishop's not on B4. It's not like E3 or
Correct.
E1. I'm not.
But here you're going to get hit by knight C4 eventually.
Oh yes, oh yes. I have to
And
be.
I'm wondering if I should play C3 or should I play Queen D2.
It's a double-edged position.
Mm-hmm.
But
But we
the
gotta
only
move.
question I has was knight F6 the most challenging to white setup? What's the move, Jennifer?
E4 played by black.
E2,
Pawn to
E4.
Wow, going for it with
Okay.
that move.
So that really basically, telegraphs, I'm playing for E5 and you can have the B6 square. So let's see, E4, knight C4. Now,
Well, be careful, because there are little F4 thingamajiggies that you got to look out for.
always.
I mean, this position just got crazy.
Wild.
But
Bishop-
Thingamajig.
thingamajigs.
Bishop G4 might be met by F3.
I remember numerous games as a King's Indian defense player where white very often plays this move, rook A3. And it's this beautiful idea. It's not so much as a rover in terms of an attacking setup, but much more of a defensive one. It's basically saying that ideas of F3 and E3, my rook on the third rank is going to patrol this rank and make it very difficult for the attack to break through. Wow, this is really double-edged stuff. Great great start to this round.
Great start
8-4.
to round 8. Indeed.
Round 8, sorry.
I would like to point out that
Game
later
8.
in the round, we're going to have, later in the game, we're going to have Grandmaster Peter Leko, one of the top GMs in the world. And
former World Chess Champion Challenger.
He's going to be on the show.
And Sveshnikov genius as well.
Exactly. Big
Sveshnikov practitioner.
Perfect day to have Leko on.
Yeah,
right.
He will absolutely give us a lot of the nuances in this position.
Specialist, boy.
Yes, indeed. So quite fortunate for us to have him on, and we'll have some great guests on coming up in the later shows as well. Some big names that you will recognize. There'll be some world championship titleists, and that's all I'll say for now. You'll have to watch the show to find out. But this position, guys, this position is wild. E4, knight C4, F4. The engine is bishop B4, knight F6, queen D4. I'm giving you one line. F3, sacrificing the pawn, and after GF3, knight H5, just all out going for it. You've got that side. Take as much as you want, but suddenly black is looking to put a knight on F4, bishop on F6, just come down as fast as possible, get the queen in the mix. What's going on here? No one knows. The engines are giving almost triple zeros. Okay, slight edge to white actually in this position, but chaos reigns in a position like this one. Who will fight this battle better? I mean, that's really what it's going to come down to, because in an equal position, it's going to be, do you feel this the right way? And mistakes are absolutely going to be punished. So it's game 8. I don't know what it is about game 8 in these matches, but we've got it now. And this is the position indeed after the move E4. You've got to love it. The players are finally going for it. This is the kind of chess we wanted to see them play from the very beginning.
It's been a long wait, but it's been a very worthwhile wait, Maurice. That knight C4, F4, I got to tell you, I don't think I would find the move bishop B4 an attractive move. First of all, my bishop looks a little bit funky
but it
on
looks
the
like
move
knight C4
B4.
was played.
Yeah, I definitely...
you expected that, but then you think that after F4, what's a more normal move for you?
Yeah, well, absolutely. I say the knight on A3 is out of the game. Knight C4 is basically the perfect square because it does attack B6 and it does protect the E5 square. So knight C4 is an automatic. After F4, which isn't completely an automatic for me, I would play the move rook A3. And
Gotcha.
I would just say, hey, look, I'm here to refute F2, F3.
But the thing is that a lot of these moves that Magnus are playing are intuitive, and therefore it's probably still in his prep.
Right.
So even if bishop e4 is a little weird looking, if you looked at it with Sese and top computer engines. Speaking of top computer engines, by the way, knight e5 was played by Magnus. Not F4.
Yeah, that wasn't completely clear to me either. Sorry.
Knight to e5.
Yes,
speaking of computer engines, and deep learning, the creator of DeepMind, Demis Hassabis, played one e4 for Fabiano Caruana.
In the opening.
So he was the official who started off the game. They've had celebrities and
I saw the young
great
boy
minds
like
every day.
9-year-old young boy.
I think a top British junior actually.
Yeah, very, very, very cute. But yeah, DeepMind, of course, created the AlphaZero program, who all had us just mystified by some of its extraordinary play.
And if you want to learn more about Demis Hassabis, there's a great documentary about his Go program, which also touches on chess as well, called AlphaGo.
Right.
Brilliant guy. I mean, just incredible what they've done there. That said, the fact that he's playing one e4 means that it must be the best move. Yeah, I mean, that tells you.
That's my test, according to Bobby Fischer.
Of course, the person who makes the first move, they have to play what the player tells them. Right. But I can't remember if AlphaZero liked e4 or d4 better. Do you?
I think it more or less. I didn't see the drawn games. I saw the decisive games. It seemed like it was favoring d4.
Yeah, I think after some time.
Right. Yeah.
Okay.
After a few million games that it played against itself.
That's why Demis has this like bad look on his face. I want to play d4.
Right. No. Now this, after the move knight e5, I think a lot of amateurs would ask themselves a very salient question: should I capture that knight on e5?
Exactly.
Or not,
Good
and
question.
Double up my opponent's pawns. Now here's why we got ourselves so excited at the start of play. Because of these majorities. We love these majorities. Look at Black's huge kingside central majority. It's literally 5 versus 3 over here. And then from white's point of view, these 1, 2, 3, 4 pawns versus these 2 pawns. So it's, you know, like, you know, you go for the races here with b4, c5, but black isn't without his own counterplay as well with f5.
I'd argue that my race is better than your race because I got a juicy king at the finish line.
Exactly. I'd be a little bit reluctant to go with the knight e5.
I don't like it.
And I would jump.
Not.
It's adding fuel to my
plus,
fire.
Plus, he already had a plan, a very clear plan in mind. He played knight b6 and after to b8 played f4, and that blunts the pawns from going down the board. Now that pawn on f5 is sitting there, unable to make any energy. He almost forced a capture, by the way,
absolutely,
on f3 because
there's no question.
Your pawns will go nowhere if you just back up, and then he gets to play bishop e3 and smile. So f4 it's almost compels e takes on f3, followed by bishop takes f3, and then we have that position where white can say he's gotten his knight to the b6 square.
Exactly. Now, how big is
and Fabi looks like he's still in his prep. He's throwing out his moves. No question that his prep here had to have been deeper than Magnus's prep in this position, because Fabi got to pick which line he was going to play, while Magnus had to do deep prep on all the lines.
That's right.
Of the Sveshnikov. So he couldn't drill super deep into every single position. At some point, he had to say, you know what, this is okay. I can play this. This is okay. I get the ideas. No doubt, Fabi and his seconds, not only did they show him the lines, but they played several blitz games in the line as well, training games. Let's see how you feel this position. Get it in your fingertips. He might have played 20, 30 games in this line to get the different nuances out, just to get a competitive feel. It's a normal strategy that top players do. Everybody should do it, in fact. Don't just study the opening lines and try to memorize, this is the move, this is the move, this is the move. Best person is a partner or a computer, best a human partner, obviously best is both. So just practice and say, let me get this position in my fingertips, see what it feels like before I sit at the board and have to play it, especially in a World Championship match. So Fabi playing very quickly, f4 on the board. He's seen this position before. He's playing it lightning fast, and Magnus will have to say, okay, when am I going to get out of this guy's preparation? Because he clearly looks very confident that he knows what's going on.
That's right. He's playing instantly, and this is something that Fabi sometimes does when he's in prep. He doesn't make any bluffing attempts where he's saying, like, oh, maybe I know it, maybe I don't. Because there's another way to go about it. Just play instantly. It puts a lot of pressure on your opponent.
Well, it also sends a very clear message that, look, I prepared this. I know what I'm doing. And
watch out.
I've got my plan already formatted. How about you?
And as we've seen, that sometimes that feeling can sometimes cause Magnus to play substandard moves, which when he's playing white, it's okay, right? He thought he played a little
Bishop
softly
E2.
yesterday.
That's
He admitted it in the press conference that maybe it was a bit soft, but that's when you're white, it's okay, right?
Right.
He still made a comfortable draw. In fact, as Fabi said in the press conference, it was still him who had to find good moves.
Right.
But do that with black.
I don't think that's a very good idea. I think that could be, in fact, a fatal idea. Now, having said that, how good
is White's position?
Is White's position?
After knight f3,
I'm thinking en passant.
After takes f3 en passant, okay.
Oh, pardon
Which has occurred.
I'm thinking en passant is absolutely forced, by the way.
Thank goodness for Magnus that rule exists.
Yes, exactly. And now, okay, so White has definitely got his knight firmly ensconced on the queen side. This knight on b6 is excellent. I don't like this bishop on c8. I would love to have the bishop on f5, which means I have to move the pawn forward to f4, which means in order to do that, I've also got to think about g5. But let's start with the straightforward f4. And just a question, how do you like it? Do you like to play this position, Jen?
Well, that knight on e5 looks really good, but I am worried about the security of that pawn on f4, as you mentioned. If the bishop moves, for instance, I guess I'd play bishop e4, you have bishop g4.
Bishop e4, bishop g4?
And suddenly a lot of your issues are solved. Because you get that bishop out, and I think I can just follow up with f3.
Yeah, once you get f3, you start to worry that White's king is a little bit too
exposed.
I mean,
they're playing both goals. I mean, we're just excited because Fabi's the one who's
It's
playing,
such a double-edged.
as Anand said, he's the one with the information advantage. He's the
Right.
one who knew he was going to get in there and studying it not just the last couple of days, but perhaps the whole week.
Exactly.
And so that's a big advantage in terms of psychology and time. But in terms of the position, I'm not ready to give White a huge edge.
Yeah,
It looks
me
double-edged
too.
to me.
Me too, because again, I'm looking at this knight on e5, and from Black's point of view, a lot of his moves strike me as quite natural. G5, Bishop F5, and
How do you play against Rook A4 right now?
Rook A4. Huh.
Not the first move that came to my mind there. Rook to A4, so you attack the pawn. So I'll defend the pawn.
Go, baby.
Push him,
That's all
baby.
you're doing. Yes,
him, baby.
defending.
And now Bishop C3.
Bishop to C3. So I'm wondering if you're going to take or not. Okay, Bishop to F5. Finally, see, this knight on B6 really, really cramps Black's queen side. But if the queen side pieces all escape to develop squares,
And the knight actually looks like
then the
Okay, but
knight,
Bishop E4.
just in the corner taking a selfie.
just in the corner taking a side. I hadn't thought of it like that. Bishop to E4.
It doesn't look good anymore. Bishop E4. What, can we go back to G4 like we did before? I guess it's not quite as appealing because we don't gain as much
Okay.
time, but still.
But again, I mean,
Queen move, Queen D2.
yeah.
Before we were playing F3, but I guess in that situation you had like Bishop E5 and then take on.
Well, Black's pieces are finding good squares too. I mean, White's pieces all have good squares.
The idea of F3 isn't going anywhere.
Right.
Yeah.
You just want to play, Queen E7 and keep up the momentum of getting your pieces to good squares. That is a nice majority. That 3-pawn versus 2-pawn, and if you put this pawn on C5 very, very fast, I'll take White. But I see this as a three-edge,
So Bishop D4.
three result game myself.
Yeah, you could say that again.
I see this as a 3-result game myself.
If you could have more results,
Yeah.
a 6-result game.
A 6-result game.
Well, I think there should be 6
match.
results. It could be a perpetual in the middle game, a win for White in the middle game, a win for Black in the middle game, or all of those 3 things in the end game.
I'll tell you what. I mean, all of these top grandmasters. You talk about polarized American politics, polarized chess grandmasters. I think a lot of Sveshnikov players would make an argument why they like Black, and I think a lot of White players would make an argument why they like White. In other words,
we'd
it's a
both be-
marketplace, and everybody be
Yeah.
right.
And we'd have trouble with both colors, everybody in the world against Alpha Zero.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Alpha Zero's looking good with both colors. By the way, it started off playing the Sicilians, if I remember correctly, but those kind of dropped off, right?
Then it started to play
Double
E5,
kings,
double
yeah.
king pawn, yeah.
So I would have cringed watching the first couple moves of this game. E4, question mark. C5, question mark.
Exactly. So I'm saying that kudos to Fabi for his preparation. He's definitely got an edge on the clock, and he's probably very, very familiar with the position. But after this takes, I don't know if we should begin with G5 or F4 as we've started out, and or Bishop F6. But I still haven't seen a position where I say, oh, I really think this is a big advantage for Fabi, and his preparation looks terrific. Jury's still out for me.
Well, yeah, and by the way, I was totally overstating the Alpha Zero thing. Just because it prefers D4 and double king pawn doesn't mean that it thinks it's a massive difference.
No.
We're talking about incremental differences.
Exactly.
The reason
Shades of shades.
Yeah, I mean, the reason it would be crushing human players would be because of other reasons, not because
its
of
tactical awareness is just it's extraordinarily gifted in terms of looking deep into the position.
And this type of position it would be particularly excelling in because this is very explosive and a lot of creative ideas can end up being key to the position.
And very, very forcing lines. Now, Maurice is over there just looking at the supercomputer of Sese. And how, Maurice, share with us your research.
Well, Sese is giving this position as essentially equal, very slight edge to White in this position, which Black will take because that's basically what the initial assessment is supposed to be in the opening itself, because white has the first move. It's giving f4 as the key move with rook a4, but not g5, but bishop to g5 as a primary move there. Although g5, when I'm looking at this with a normal engine, right, which is still 3,200, f4, rook a4, g5 in the line that you talked about doesn't seem like that bad a move. A little bit more loosening to be sure, but certainly thematic. Bishop to g5 is given as a very solid move here for black, keeping the position together. And again, the issue of exactly how does white get his pawns going down the board with effect?
Right.
That is the question we have right now.
Right.
Exactly how does that work? And how does Fabi plan to execute that? Because here, black may not be going anywhere, but neither is white per se. He does have the opportunity to just try to push and maybe even sacrifice with c5. That happens sometimes, but you got to do all that, timing it out really, really well. Here, it does look like he can go for it. It looks like a sharp, just an extremely, as you mentioned, Yaz, an extraordinarily sharp position, and that's it. Right. And now we've got to figure out some plans for both sides. White's plan is very clear here. Black's plan, I'm not so sure. You mentioned bringing the bishop out. And well, you like the pawn being on g5.
I like the pawn being on g5.
That makes the plan very clear.
Right.
This position less so, with the bishop sitting on g5. We'd have to find out if this actually gives natural play. Would be something that Magnus would do, given that you have to find a way to play this position. You could also drop the bishop back and then play for g5, but you have to argue why the bishop is better here than it is on this square.
Exactly. Well, again, as a King's Indian perk rat defense player, I like my fianchetto bishop, so that's why I like to play g5 and bishop f6. I think a lot of King's Indian players seem this would feel the same way. It's kind of ironic, though, that after a move like f4, rook a4, the computers like to post their bishop behind the pawn like this, bishop g5. I mean, a lot of human players would just sit there and say, well, isn't my bishop, I'm self-contained. I've trapped, I've ensnared my bishop behind the pawn. Whereas if I put my pawn on g5 and my bishop on f6, it may be going places. I see this as a very exciting game in store for us. Back over to you, Maurice, please.
Yes, I woke up this morning pretty early, and I was looking online at different things, as we all do, looking at social media. And I got one post that talked about that argued that these 12-game matches make for boring chess. 12 games, people are being very careful. They don't want to fight too hard. They're testing each other out. One decisive game makes such a big deal that they're scared to play. Well, it's a very logical argument, but don't let logic get in the way of facts. Let's take a look at the history of 12-game matches, beginning with Kramnik-Topalov in 2006. Well, that 12-game match certainly was not careful, dull, boring at all. There were 6 decisive games. Okay, admittedly, one was a forfeit game, that toilet gate argument, but 6 decisive games in that match. Then if we go to the very next match, Kramnik-Anand, we see 4 decisive games. Then to Anand-Topalov, 5 decisive games. Anand needed to win the last game in order to win the match, the 12th game. As a matter of fact, they started with body blows right away, out the gate. And in that Kramnik won the very first one, he won the first 2 games in that match as well. Then we see a little tapering off. Anand versus Gelfand were only 2 decisive games. They needed rapid chess to decide it, where Anand won 1 of those 4 games. Then Anand Carlsen was just pure domination. 3 games won. He didn't even need a 12th game in order to decide that match. Then 4 decisive games in Carlsen, Anand. Again, early wins appearing in games 2 and 3, if memory serves correct, in that match. And then it was Carlsen-Karyakin, where Carlsen just had Karyakin by the throat and couldn't seal the deal because Karyakin defended so well. And then Carlsen lost game 8, pushing too hard, and then finally had to win a game, and then they went to rapid, where Carlsen won 2. So these matches have been quite cantankerous, a word I've been using, but it shows the sort of recency bias that people have when they see, well, all these draws, it must be a reason, and those who prefer the longer matches will point to the 12-game match as the flaw. Well, that has simply not been the case historically.
Yeah, I think that in this case, you could argue, a lot of people have this feeling that Anand happens to disagree with, that Magnus is such an overwhelming favorite in the tie breaks that he might be trying to play for draws, or like not play for draws. That's an exaggeration, but not take as many risks. Like, for instance, with Bishop B2, is he already thinking, maybe I can just get to the tie break? I don't know if that's true or not. Maybe it'll be true in the last couple of games. Right. But you can just give the exact contrary argument for Fabi then. You can say maybe he wants to take a risk to avoid that. I mean, he doesn't think I'm sure he doesn't think he's a massive underdog, but he'd rather win a classical game.
Of course he would.
So I think that it's just kind of these things. It's a duality, right? Like if it's true that one player doesn't want it to happen, then that almost by definition means the other player wants it to happen.
Yeah, I'm still struck by something that you had said yesterday. And first of all, thank you for setting the historical record straight, Maurice. But taking a look at this match and the very, very previous match, you were saying, Jennifer, how incredibly accurate the players' play has been. And their accuracy is going to just get better and better in the future. So, I mean, are the number of draws going to be so high? And we were talking about the World Championships, like Magnus Carlsen, 2016, had played 12 games and won 1. Yay, lost 1. So far, 7 games drawn, right? So out of the recent 19 classical games that Magnus has played, he's won 1. Not exactly the dominating performance that we've come to expect out of our world champion.
Remember, though, he did dominate his 2 matches against Anand, and he had 3 wins in each of those. So being fair to him, it's his opponents have been getting better and better.
That's right.
And have sort of figured him out a little bit. The fear factor is not there anymore, particularly against players who are his exact same age or even younger.
As is Fabi.
As is Fabi. So the older players, it's kind of a passing of the torch. A generation gets a little bit weaker. Maybe they're not as in their prime anymore. But you got these guys who are hungry. They see him and they say, oh, no, we want a piece of you. We don't have the same fear as the others when you were just blasting through and wiping away a generation almost. I mean, we had guys like Topalov, Kramnik, Anand, Gelfand, who were ruling the roost. They were like at the top. And then the young guns showed up and said, well, we've seen Carlsen beat all you guys. We're going to try to get a piece of that action.
Right. But look what we have.
And now we're going to fight him too. And we're seeing them fight him well.
Yes.
So that has certainly changed historically.
And we have a move, G5, yes.
Now, that's the
kind
now we're cooking, boy. Woo!
I was teasing Rex Sinkfield the other day. I was saying, Rex, we're commentators. You want us to make chicken salad, you got to give us some chicken,
I don't know.
I don't know. This game is really giving us all kinds of things to talk about.
5
I
and
love
6
this
were
move.
riveting, also.
Yeah.
But this game, this opening.
You can have your 5 and 6.
Yeah,
I'll take this one.
Yes.
For both of those.
I want a middle game with queens, and I want double edge.
It's the
G5.
first. It's actually I call it yesterday was like the first middle game that we had with queens. So that quickly became a queen full endgame, right?
Queen full endgame.
So I just came up with that on the spot.
Oh, yeah. I'm sure you've been practicing.
I don't think it's going to stick.
That was a setup. G5. Okay, now, cantankerous, contentious,
Let's
challenging.
do it. Let's do
I
it.
like
a lot of words. Obstreperous, belligerent, bellicose. We're going to go to the thesaurus on this one.
I like belligerent.
Because it's wild right now, but I will tell you, the computers hate G5.
Okay.
Sassy thinks bad move, so bad that he's almost lost a pawn already.
What?
A pawn
Wow.
Not an inaccuracy, but a mistake.
Wow. One of the first of the match.
And there's no losing a pawn on the board. There's no sequence that loses the pawn. Sassy's not saying I can win a pawn by force.
I just don't like the move G5 at all.
It just hates G5, which is incredible. It's giving a 1.33 advantage to White in this position, and White's move is C4. C4. White's not winning any material. White's just continuing to carry out this plan of this queenside demonstration with C4 and Bishop C3. I'm just looking at the moves. C4, Bishop F6, Bishop C3, Knight D7. So, I mean, this is set. By the way, Stockfish is saying it's fine for black. Stop overstating the case.
So it makes you kind of curious what Alpha Zero would say. But as this game heats up, we're going to go to a quick break because we're getting set up with our special guest, Grandmaster and World Championship Challenger in 2004, Peter Leko. And
Sveshnikov specialist too.
Well, we're going to wonder if he'll argue, get in there and defend the Sveshnikov to the death. We're also going to leave you with the top players in the U.S. and their thoughts, or actually I think top players internationally.
Globally, yeah.
And what they think about this match.
Excellent.
Fabiano has ability to morph because he's always learning new things. So I think I wouldn't, be just to him if I would say that his chances are less than 45%.
I definitely hope he'll win this match. He is a tremendous player, and I like him as a person too. Despite him wishing me to do badly in all my tournaments, and I think it's really hard to not call Magnus a favorite, no matter how much you love America or love whatever else Fabiano represents. So I think we have to give him 30% chance.
Well, it's probably, well, it's hard to say the closest match because Karyakin already brought him to a tiebreak. But let's say this match, I expect to be very competitive. But also, I think the games will be very hard fought and open. Karyakin, and to some degree, we tried a more a solid approach, not allowing Magnus a lot of space. That was kind of the idea we had. But I think Fabiano will take it to a much harder. And it's nice that the two of them are the closest in rating that Magnus has ever faced in a match.
I feel that Fabiano has to win in the Classical. If it goes to Rapid, I think that Magnus is probably 95% or better to win in the Rapid and Blitz. Simply based on the historical fact that Magnus pretty much never loses a tiebreaker. And even the tiebreaker he played against Sergey in the last World Championship, he really dominated that. And I think I would consider Sergey to be a vastly superior Rapid and Blitz player to Fabiano. So Fabiano has to win in Classical.
I think it's going to be a very close match. I would rate Magnus as a very slight favorite, like 55 or 60% favorite. If they were going to play 100 matches, I would definitely favor Magnus. It's only one match, and I think that Fabiano will rise to the challenge and give Magnus as hard a time as he can possibly get.
Carlsen, of course, is still number one in the world. He's the best chess player in the world. Favorite will be Magnus, but I hope Caruana will win. Yeah, I hope chess world will change something. Some new world champion will come. I hope Caruana will win, but I think Magnus' chance is better because he is still number one and he's very strong.
He's a very dangerous opponent for Magnus, and that if he is able to come to the match like in his top shape, then I'm pretty sure it will be a very close match. It is clear from the last tournaments that he's keeping his high level, his form. Yeah, I think it will be very, very close match, very interesting match.
I think it's 45% for Caruana and 55% for Magnus, but at the same time I wish Fabiano will win. Because we all need some changes, and we are all very tired of Magnus, and if there will be some change, it will be very nice.
Hello and welcome back to Today in Chess World Championship Edition. As we see, Fabiano Caruana has prepared this opening as, in fact, on the break I checked, and it turns out that after 18 moves, Fabi had more time on the clock than he started with.
Oh my gosh, so it's really played virtually instantly, and the 30-second bonus has added time.
That's right. That's right. So, and putting the pressure on Magnus, he did play the move C4, and then
after G5, we left it. We saw the move C4, then we saw the move F4. So very natural play by both players.
And it seems like this is the first time so far in the game that Fabi is sneaking into a think.
After the move F5,
sinking into a think, rather. But that's a perfect time to bring on our special guest, who we are so lucky to have today. We've got one of the top grandmasters in the world, former world championship challenger, and Sveshnikov whiz.
Specialist. Yes.
We have Peter Leko. Thank you for joining us so much.
Yeah, hello everybody.
Good morning, Peter.
From Hungary. What do you think about today's opening?
Well, I think it's fascinating. That's what we were all waiting for. So far, we have seen all the Rossolimos against the Sveshnikov. In fact, really, this whole match from the black side looks like some vintage Leko match, because I used to play the Sveshnikov exclusively, and basically thanks to the Sveshnikov, I became the World Championship Challenger. I qualified myself in Dortmund 2002 thanks to winning a lot of games with black in the Sveshnikov, and I faced also a lot of anti-Sveshnikovs. So I was really very interested to see how the match develops and how Fabiano will try to change, how he will try to shift, since he didn't really achieve anything with the Rossolimos. And today we finally see him going for the Sveshnikov and going for the knight d5 line, which I have been actually using with white in 2002. Exactly at the moment when I was playing the Sveshnikov, I also was playing it from the white side. This, I think, also gives some hint that Sveshnikov players do think that this knight d5 option is a really serious one.
And why did you choose it over the lines of bishop g5 yourself? Was it stylistic, or you just thought it was the best move?
No, the point is that usually the Sveshnikov players like to play a certain type of positions. And after bishop g5 and taking on f6, you always kind of get a standard Sveshnikov. But by playing knight d5, you change the pawn structure of the position. And the position very much resembles some Najdov structures. And this is already kind of psychological. Okay, Magnus' case, of course, he plays all kinds of openings, so it shouldn't really come as a surprise to him to change the structure. But still, when you are you are going for the Sveshnikov, you kind of want to play Sveshnikov structures. So it's kind of psychological, and I think from Fabiano's case, it was like a very logical choice. If he is willing to enter the Sveshnikov, then he doesn't know in the main lines which lines Magnus is going to choose. And this is always something that you really worry during a World Championship match, because you know that your opponent definitely is fully armed in his setup, and you still don't know which setup it is. But with knight d5, you basically force the game into your territory, and this is one of the things that the team members really like, because then they can devote their time and try to find some specific idea where we're going to try to surprise Magnus and not waiting that he's going to surprise us again.
Brilliant, Peter. Now, when you say that, you mean that when in the bishop g5 line, there's a couple branches that black could choose, like playing f5 or bishop e6?
Exactly. I mean, f5 and bishop g7, those are the two completely different type of positions. And even later inside, there are a lot of options, while here white limits black choice. After knight d5, knight takes d5, e takes d5, knight b8 is kind of almost exclusively played. And Fabiano chose this positional way with a4. I think c4 used to be much more the main move, but I know and I do remember that somebody brought to my attention already in 99 or 2000 that, you know, if you play the Sveshnikov, you have to watch out for this a4 line, because the whole idea is that you don't push c4 yet. In this case, the white knight has the possibility to through a3, c4 to get to b6 like it happened in the game. While if you put the pawn on c4, black plays a6, you have to retreat to c3 with the knight, and you kind of never really can use this b6 square. So basically, I think the move bishop d2 was kind of a key move on move 12. It looks like a harmless move, looks like white is doing nothing by bishop d2, but in fact prepares this whole a5 line, a5 idea, that after a6 you can retreat your knight to a3 because the pawn is not hanging on a5. This is kind of crucial, and the way things are going, it leads definitely to a very, very dynamic position with a lot of chances for both sides, but usually I think this is a territory which suits now white, because white is still kind of more into his preparation.
That's right. It looks like Fabi's played all of his moves almost instantly until this moment. After the move f4, it looks like Fabi's thinking for the first time in the game.
He has moved.
Oh, he's moved?
Bishop c3 is on the board.
He's played bishop c3, so he must still be in his preparation. Peter, beyond this game, what do you think of the match so far? Has it surprised you in any way?
Well, I mean, I knew from my own experience that the first game is very special. I mean, the first game, especially if you get the white pieces, you kind of feel yourself obliged to show the whole world that as a challenger you are ready to face the world champion. And I think Magnus very much was trying to use the same moment like Kramnik used against me, because he really challenged Fabiano in the first game. And definitely Fabiano was kind of into a fight. He wanted to show that, yeah, doesn't matter if it's your preparation, I'm going to play principle and I'm ready to enter and I'm going to challenge you. But he ran into some really deep preparation, and he was finally very lucky to escape. After that, however, he was able to show some very good preparation with the black side. And once you feel yourself completely secure that nothing is happening to you when you are safe, when you are playing black, you feel yourself safe, then there is not so much pressure when you are playing white. And then you kind of feel like, okay, I have the freedom of try to test my opponent in different lines, try to see how he reacts. Maybe I'm gonna try to find a weak spot or find something where the opponent will feel uncomfortable. Finally, it seemed like the Rossolimo is not the right territory for that, because the fight is quite limited. There are not so many options to really surprise, and once it was clear that Magnus has his setups and those setups are worked out, it was quite logical that you have to move on. And it's also psychological that we are now exactly at the halftime, so it feels like now it's the right time to start a new clash, a new front. This is also what Kramnik did. If you remember back to my game, my match, then the first games I was planning to play the Marshal. So we have seen a lot of anti-Marshals, and finally when the second half of the match started, then he finally was ready to enter the Marshal, because he did not really expect from me before the match that I'm going to play the Marshal, so he needed time to adjust. And once he went for this very critical line, which I have finally won in some fairy tale circumstances, I nevertheless stopped playing the Marshal for the entire match. It had such an effect. Definitely, of course, now with new computer technologies, you don't really abandon the opening that you came up with. But those days in 2004, it was kind of clear that if he's ready to enter the Marshal, and he's already probably spending so much time with incredible coaches, that's the right time just to leave it and move on. Now we will see what will happen in this game, because the position is a fascinating one. I also thought that Magnus, okay, he basically did not really have a choice. I mean, when you are faced with a new concept, you kind of automatically feel like it would be nice to find a solid setup where you can just play without any big concessions. However, here if black is not going for the principled moves like f5 and e4 and knight e5 and try to get a counterplay on the king side, then you are just risking to be tortured on the queen side, and if you are not in time, you might just lose the game. So basically these aggressive intentions from black side are the way to create enough dynamics to counterbalance the problems that you are facing on the queen side. Now we are seeing some position where time is a huge factor. It's clear that if white gets 2 extra tempos and gets some b4, c5 in, then black's position will just collapse. So I guess black is trying some bishop f6, bishop f5 connected with g4 and counterplay on the king side. So it's very easy to explain what is happening strategically, but it all depends on move per move calculations in this position.
So when you say time, you really mean timing, like just so, the precise thing that happens on move by move. Let me ask you, Peter, you won game 8 of your match against Kramnik to take the lead in that match. Psychologically, what did that mean for you? Because eventually he did win the final game, and a tied match ended up costing you the chance to play any tiebreak since there was no tiebreak in effect. A lot of players feel like a win now would virtually be decisive. A lot of people commenting from the side feel like a win now virtually would be decisive in this match. Is that your opinion as well, given that you yourself had a lead and didn't manage to hold it?
Yeah, well, I think that winning a game is extremely important, but it's just the beginning of the match. Mm-hmm. I mean, there are still a lot of games, and it's typically also the dynamic of a match. Once somebody wins, then the other one gets much more angry, gets somehow much more focused, because he knows that he needs to strike back. So also in the way he approaches the opening preparation, the way he chooses the line, the way the seconds are working, then you know that there is no time for testing anymore. Until the score is even, you feel like, okay, there is nothing to lose. I mean, why to take some extra risk if you can try to get the information from the opponent by just testing him in different lines? Once you lose, it changes dramatically. Then you feel like you don't have any time to test. You have to go for it. And this also gives your opponent a chance. And the whole match gets wide open. Basically, I think for the spectators, it's clear that whoever wins, sooner or later, it will change the dramaturgy of the match completely. But the match is only over when it's over. I mean, I knew that I'm leading before the last game, but I was not even thinking that I have won the match, because I knew that the black game is still waiting for me. And also kind of you have to imagine the players, because we are watching the games and we are kind of always fresh for the game and we are looking forward to the game, but the players have incredible tension to face during the whole preparation phase of the match. Then during the match, the seconds are working day and night trying to find ideas. They are actually, even if you don't see in the games, it doesn't mean that they are not finding hundreds of ideas. The only problem is that when you are working seriously, then you also find the antidote for your opponent. And once you find the antidote, then you already kind of think that they also work day and night, so they must anticipate this idea. And that's why it's so difficult to finally decide on what you're going to play. And once you do something and it doesn't work out, it's very easy for the spectators to say, no, of course he should have tried something else. But I mean, in that situation, believe me, it's extremely difficult, and you have to be also practical. I think this choice of Fabiano was definitely practical, because it was clear that Magnus could not have anticipated this line. Maybe he has looked at it a little bit, but I mean, you don't have the luxury of spending with every single setup days. Yeah.
Speak about that. Sorry, Yaz. I'm just fascinated when he said the idea of tension, psychology, even fatigue. Your match was 14 games long, if I remember correctly. How do those soft factors, not the hard chess moves, but the soft factors, play a role in the match?
Yeah, well, basically at I think the last 5-6 days, I was already hardly able to eat anything. I mean, that was the point. The tension was already so much. And the problem was also that I was running out of openings with black. I mean, those were prior computer eras. And it was much more difficult to switch to a new opening. So finally it was, you know, when you're feeling that you are on your limit physically, mentally, and you still have to kind of come up with a new opening to surprise Kramnik. because you know that he has the best helpers in the world and he has the best preparation in the world, then it's extremely tough. And I was hanging on. I was also not playing with white the lines that I was normally feeling comfortable with, yeah, because during the match I had to switch to d4, and my usual opening with white was e4, so I was kind of also from the white side in heavy pressure. That's why I had even not the slightest time to think about the score. I was just, thinking about the next game. And finally, okay, Kramnik played a brilliant 14 game. Of course, I had a chance at one moment. If I would have used my chance, maybe I would have become the world champion at that point. But I missed that chance, and then he punished me recklessly, and that was it. He didn't give me a second chance.
You talk about not able to eat. How did you manage that then? No, the food, the tension. What did your handlers try to do to get you in the right frame of mind? What are these guys going through with their handlers?
Yeah, well, I mean, you have to ask them. Yeah, everybody handles tension differently. I mean, back then it was also a different situation because there was no tie breaks. So it's clear that if finally the match would have been 7-7 like it ended, probably the tension would have been not that enormous, because I would still feel like, then, okay, if I lose that game, I still have the tie breaks. But by knowing the fact that simply if you lose that game or Kramnik manages to equalize the score, then he remains the champion, this basically puts a lot of pressure on you. And maybe this was also connected to it. But I think the rules were fair. I mean, I knew right from the beginning that there is no tiebreak. So in this sense, everything was normal. And when you look at that Kramnik has defeated Kasparov and that's how he became the champion, then you understand that, yeah, in order to become world champion, you really have to beat the champ.
Peter, first of all, hello. Nice to see you again, and thank you so much for joining us. Double-edged game. You mentioned that you're a fan of Fabi's preparation, but in this exact position, if you had your choice of which color to play, black or white, what would you prefer? Which color would you prefer and why?
Not counting the clock times.
Not counting the clock times.
Well, I mean, generally I feel that white's position is preferable. I mean, that's kind of my feeling, but I mean, it can change in one move, and as I said, everything depends on move per move calculation. Black will play bishop f6, or maybe he has played already.
It doesn't look like he has played it yet.
I'm
like
anticipating bishop f6.
It has not been played. It has definitely not been played yet.
Let's anticipate bishop f6, Peter.
Exactly, yeah. And then already the question is how to proceed with white. I mean, I feel like you have two options. Try to play b4 and c5 right away, or to move the bishop from f3 to e4. But that's when I'm saying time is a factor. Bishop e4 might give a tempo and give away the control over the g4 square, which black might be able to use with bishop g4 or also knight g4. So I think already by playing bishop d2 to c3, Fabiano has basically clarified his intentions that I'm going to leave my bishop on f3, and only once you play g4 I will consider moving it. I'm consider moving it because maybe after g4 always some bishop takes e5 is a possibility. And then the g4 pawn is kind of hanging. Now the rook on a1 is sometimes hanging also, but it's tactics. Now after bishop g4, bishop takes a1, I can take on c8, for example.
Exactly.
And those exchange sacrifices can be extremely good for white. With the knight on b6 and with this grip, black suddenly has no counterplay whatsoever. Not even to mention that after bishop e6 check there is some knight d7 fork if white really wants. So I understand the reason why Magnus is thinking, because here now every move is kind of crucial. You just cannot allow yourself make a move by hand. and simply later regret it because it might just not work move per move.
Peter, I'd like to point out something else that I'm sure you will have something to say about, because in this position also, bishop f6 can be met by another alternative, the move c5, blowing up the position. And if takes on c5, then d6. And suddenly white has this big pass pawn on d6. He's opened up the game, and black's king is looking very exposed as well.
Exactly. I mean, it's also a typical idea in the King's Indian. Often you see this, that white sacrifices a pawn like c5 or e5 to break the black structure. And yeah, once you push d6, the knight on e5 gets very vulnerable. You get access to the d5 square. Some queen d5 check can come with devastating effects. So yeah, definitely something to think about on the black side. This probably already means that maybe bishop f6 is not the best, but then what exactly? Because c5 is anyway hanging in the air.
Yes, the Indians are trying to stop this move with queen c7, which seems a bit passive to me. If you got to make moves like that, you can't be that happy.
Definitely, exactly, because then you lose the tempo. Okay, now you hit c4 pawn, but I'm also not sure if that's really a threat. Yeah, maybe black has to play queen c7, but it's certainly a move that you don't really feel comfortable doing.
Exactly.
Because it kind of shows that maybe something went wrong. But maybe engine says queen c7 and everything is under control. It might also be the case, but during the game you are not able to ask such question to an engine, so you are kind of always uncertain and you don't feel comfortable losing a tempo just to stop some move like c5.
Peter, before the match, probably you, like many, felt that Magnus was a favorite. Did you see him as a big favorite or not? And has the match surprised you in the sense that it's been so evenly matched, the players?
No, not at all. I mean, to be honest, I did not really consider Magnus a favorite before the match, because I always consider that if somebody wins the candidates and becomes the challenger, then he might have very, very close chances. I mean, maybe not entirely the same, but if we are speaking in percentage and you give Magnus a 55% chance and Fabiano 45%, it already shows that it's extremely close. Then we cannot speak about real favorites. Basically, the question was that who will manage to put his will on the opponent, and who will be more successful timing the right openings, the lines, because it's clear that both opponents are perfectly prepared. And but you are not always able to show your preparation, yeah.
Right.
And who will be also in this sense a little bit more lucky? Magnus had the luck in the first game because there everything went his way. Then later Fabiano had very nice preparations with black and easy games with black. So this is basically, I think, the first time we see during the match that somebody really got something that he was looking forward to with white, and black has to face kind of problems at the board, and we see how difficult that is. It takes time and energy.
Peter, this point you made, I mean, there's so much rich stuff about World Championship matches that you're giving insight into, because the question then becomes, is it about who's the better player necessarily, or the better preparer? Because we could go back in the history of these World Championship matches. Many people might argue, well, Carlsen was clearly better than Anand when they played. That was pretty definitive. But Anand was supposed to be better than Gelfand, and they played to a tie in the first phase. And even Anand admitted, man, I could have lost that very easily. He only won one of the tiebreak matches. And then you saw Anand and Kramnik, for example, play, and Anand clearly outplayed him in their match. But if we go back to you and Kramnik, it was a tied match. People gave Gary the favorite versus Kramnik, and Kramnik defeated him. So there have been all these upsets. Is it really about the player, or, as you mentioned, all those soft factors like preparing, determination, nerves of steel, all those things?
Well, I think you need a total package, because the point is that also when a player feels that he is well prepared, it might also influence his play. I mean, he is much more confident, he feels very happy, he sleeps better, you know, all these factors should simply not be underestimated because, and on the other hand, when you feel that the opponent is well prepared, then you automatically feel yourself uneasy, uncomfortable, and you start to see ghosts. You don't know what is the right strategy, and it's not even clear if the opponent is playing so good or you are playing worse or you are not showing your best, and what is the reason for that. I mean, normally it's connected to the opponent because whenever we say that, for example, somebody is not in shape in the World Championship match, it's probably because of his opponent. Simply that he managed to find such a strategy for that match which unbalances you, you are not feeling easy, you suddenly don't know what to do with that. And if a whole new match could be played, then things would look completely different. It's I never really like to say that who is a better player, because you never really can judge this objectively. I mean, in a match, everybody has a chance, everybody is well prepared, everybody is very well motivated. You know that this is the chance of your lifetime. You are spending all your energy. So all these factors should be taken into consideration, and I think that's why it's never clear. For example, Kasparov against Kramnik looked like he was not in shape, but if Kramnik would have not killed his Grunfeld in the first white game in the match, and later he would have not be such a good and well-prepared guy in the Berlin by basically forcing Gary to go crazy. I mean, we didn't see Gary at that match the way we used to see him, and then we can say that he was simply not in shape. But if maybe Kramnik would have chosen any other opening, then we would have seen one of the best Kasparovs during the exact same match. So it's always very tricky.
Peter, as you were talking, Magnus was into a deep think, but he finally made a move, bishop to f5, instead of the bishop f6 that we were actually predicting.
And the Indians hate the move. They think this move is really bad because of c5, giving a much bigger edge even than before with this breakthrough c5. What's going on here?
You haven't had to use a tempo b4.
b4 at all. You just get c5 in for free.
You get it for free.
What could Magnus be thinking here?
Well, imagine after c5, bishop f6, white has gotten in c5, but has he necessarily resolved the central play to his advantage? Bishop f6 after c5? Peter, how do you see the move bishop f5? I mean, before the engine told you it was a bad move, it doesn't look so bad to the naked eye, does it?
Exactly. I mean, the whole point is that after all, bishop f5 is a developing move. Black was still having this problem that the bishop on c8 is kind of stuck. You feel like if you keep that bishop there forever, then you are not going to create enough counterplay. And maybe, I mean, you have to take a decision. And as we already spoke before, to play just some queen c7, it feels too slow. Playing bishop f6 then also into c5. So you develop the bishop and you hope for the best.
Exactly.
But isn't the problem still that this pawn got down the board, he go to c6, and is always threatening c7? Like even in this line, the move c6 can get played, and something like rook c1, threats of just, it looks like white has arrived, and black's play just seems somewhat nebulous, if you will. Of course, you still got to worry about your king, but I'm not as worried yet by black scoring the touchdown with rook going to c1 and this threat of c7 always hanging in the air.
Well, to be honest, I'm worried of c5, but I'm not that worried about c6 from the black side. Because I do feel that once you push c6, yeah, I understand you get a great asset on the 6th, but suddenly I also get a very nice control of the e5 square for my knight, and white is not going to unbalance it so easily. And exactly after some rook f7, I have control of the 7th rank, and I might try to launch some counter-strike on the king side. It's probably not that easy. And I know that against computers, usually those feelings somehow never work out for some exact move-per-move specific reasons. But humanly speaking, I think you do worry about c5, but if you feel that after c5, bishop f6, white's best is to go c6, then you kind of take it like, okay, I know, okay, that's what's happening. The position is already dangerous, but this case I will also have my chance to create counterplay on the king side.
Anish Theory has tweeted, Peter, as this position has come on the board, that most likely Team Carlsen's file says something like you play f4 on move 18 instead of g5, and then after rook a4 you play g5, positing that actually Magnus got confused and that g5 is a red one. First of all, what does the phrase red one mean? Do you know what that means? That just means like a stoplight, like a bad variation? And also, do you agree with Anish's assessment that Magnus probably was mixing up preparation here?
Well, maybe he was mixing, but I'm not sure that it was really prepared. I mean...
Yeah, because he spent so much time even to get to that position.
Yes, but in general, yeah, the point is that when he played g5, that's the moment when black still has the opportunity to play possession with bishop g5, I think.
Right, right. So Anish was saying, like, yes, you play g5, but only in a position where there's a little bit more commitment for white.
Yeah, I see his point. I mean, basically, another question is what he was probably pointing out, that you first go f4, and once white loses some tempo, then you're going to play g5, because once you already pushed f4, then it's just a question of time when you're going to push g5.
Right.
But yeah, somehow he might have mixed it up, because it's a little bit surprising how he got into so much trouble. Usually I know that these positions are tricky, but they are not supposed to be that good for white.
Wow, well, great.
I mean, it's just complicated, but that it's suddenly engines are giving all over the place huge advantage for white. It shows that black probably missed some move order.
Well, few final questions, Peter, because I know you have to get going to play a tennis table tournament, I believe. Table tennis. Oh.
Yes, but I still have time, so it's no hurry, thanks.
Oh, wonderful. Great. Well, we'd love to keep you on for the next 15 minutes then before we go on break. Question about you're from Hungary, and the official commentator over in London is Judith Polgar.
As well as Anna Rudolph,
right.
Both from Hungary.
Exactly, right. Both Anna now lives in Spain, but she was originally from Hungary, right? So have you you've been on lots of Olympic teams with Judith, right? Can you kind of describe what it's like to work with her?
Well, I mean, I never really worked with her, but we played together.
Yes.
We played a lot together. I think we started playing in the national team in '94. That's when I debuted in Moscow, and by the way, we have played a game with Yasser there.
Yes.
Ah.
A theoretical clash in the Grünfeld. Yes. I think the Sevilla variation. Yeah, it was a fascinating game. That was our first game together with Yasser. Yeah. And since then, we have played a lot of Olympics together with Judy. We have won 2 silver medals in 2002 Bled Olympics and 2014 in Tromsø. So we have really many great memories together in the national team.
That's interesting, because a lot of times the U.S. team is also quite similar, that the players kind of come as individuals. They work together as a team a little bit, but maybe less than certain other squads, like Armenia, for instance. It sounds like it's kind of a similar thing in Hungary, where it's a lot of great individuals that come together for one event.
Yeah, it's kind of the usual scene in chess, because simply as a top player, you automatically have your own team. I mean, your own coaches and things like this with whom you are working on your openings. And usually it is always a problem to share your thoughts openly with someone who you consider also as a rival, yeah, because you can play in individual tournaments. Then suddenly also facing each other starts to be kind of unpleasant, because if your opponent knows exactly what you are thinking about certain lines, then you really have a problem, and also your opponent has a problem. That's why players, even if they have good relation with each other, they prefer not to get in interaction. It basically doesn't really mean that the players are not good friends. but simply just it doesn't work if you're going to play the next tournament against each other and you have nothing to play. So everybody prepares for himself, but for the success of a team, it's always very important that the team has a good spirit. I mean, if there is tension between the players, somehow I don't believe that you can really succeed in a team event.
Exactly.
Peter, we really have to take a look. I really want to get your opinion now on this position because the engines really are going crazy and saying that this position is virtually dead loss for Magnus. And some of the thematics include actually taking this knight off of e5 eventually and then playing the move bishop to g4 to eliminate this piece. So a move like c5 is a really strong looking move as far as the engine is concerned because of this main problem. And it looks like one main line runs knight f3, queen f3, dc5, and then just simply rook a1. Just go down a pawn and say this position is also just busted. Move like bishop f6 can be met by h4 even, and the engines are claiming that this black has no real counterplay, and it is white with the bind in this position. What's your feeling, your gut feeling is these kind of lines are starting to develop because that plan of playing bishop takes e5 may be slightly counterintuitive, but when it's followed up by bishop g4,
very concrete.
Now it's looking really concrete, and that c-pawn starting to rush down the board. And we're talking about back here in this position with c5, a move like bishop f6 can get played, but then the move c6 again, this idea coming in the game, and then something like takes, and then maybe bishop g4, something like this is what the engine is going for, not exactly this position. In fact, first I believe they want to guard this pawn on c6 and then start the captures in this line. So maybe queen c7. First, let's start with this move and then go for the threat of bishop takes e5 with bishop g4. And suddenly, white is shutting down all of black's play, and it's white who's starting to overrun the black position.
Yeah, I mean, I simply think that it's obvious for every good player that white is better here. It's clear that something went wrong. Black is missing a tempo at least for his counterplay. The only question is always to choose between the options, because while for the engine it's quite obvious that this one is +1, +2 or whatsoever, for a human eye you kind of think differently, and you also first of all want to break the opponent's structure. Yeah, somehow it always feels that by breaking the structure it helps. As you said, this bishop takes e5, d takes e5, bishop g4 is also kind of positional, because white wants to eliminate the light square bishops, and then some queen g4, queen e6 check might appear, and black's center pawns might collapse. So I would think that the line that you mentioned, bishop e5, d5, bishop g4, is not entirely computerish. It's definitely something that Fabiano is now really considering. On the other hand, c4, c5 is so tempting. But the question is, once you understand that you play c5 and the opponent probably knows bishop f6, and you don't have anything better than c6, then you get hesitant and you start to think that, oh, hang on, but then maybe I still prefer more to take on e5 and go bishop g4 because maybe it's more clear cut. I mean, usually, humanly speaking, you always would like to get some more clarity in the position. And but on the other hand, sometimes you have to give your opponent the chance for counterplay and simply calculate deep enough to be sure that you are getting out of top on it.
Well, it seems to me like it's likely that for the first time in the game, Fabiano is no longer in his preparation. I mean, I'm not sure about that even. Maybe he anticipated bishop f5 and now is thinking, trying to review, since of course it wasn't his main line. What's your take on that? Do you agree that looking at the clock times and also the logic of the previous moves that Fabi might be thinking for the first time right now?
Yes, that's the case, but I'm already pretty sure that Fabiano is out of any kind of preparation by now. I mean, first of all, this line was not prepared before the match. It was prepared now during the match, once you get the information that the Sveshnikov is played. And basically, once you have these thoughts that you even cannot really find any antidote to it, then you first try to find a way to get a playable position. And if you get a playable position, that's already something. And when you are preparing, then you are assuming that your opponent definitely is very well prepared. So you are mainly analyzing the best options for black. So that's the point, that when suddenly black mixes up things with g5, f4, then probably at home the second is, instead of g5, he's working maybe 10 hours on f4. And g5, he just says, okay, g5 is just a bad move because it loses the tempo, and okay, you're gonna go c4, and okay, you are good enough, you know how to treat these positions. And I think definitely already after this, bishop c3 might have been the last move kind of in a preparation, but it's probably also not as a preparation, just maybe as a thought that, okay, you know, I mean, your plan is to go c4 and bishop c3, put pressure on the knight, and let's keep going.
Exactly.
If I remember correctly, Peter, you were not just a World Championship challenger, you were also a second. Weren't you a second? Was it Anand Topalov or Anand Kramnik you were second?
Yeah, I have been seconding in 2 matches, actually. And both matches went like a disaster for my player. So it's quite natural to blame me for that. But exactly also for that reason, I know that how special these matches are. I mean, I was there in the match Anand versus Kramnik, as a second of Kramnik, and I mean, yeah, those meta lines went completely out of control. However, later on, I had the feeling that if the match would have been longer, then already the situation changed in favor of Kramnik, and he then won one game and he got down to only -2 score. And if there would have been still 4 or 6 games, then I believe that Vladi very much would have been still in game, because suddenly the preparation was switching to our angle. And at the first part of the match, Vichy's openings were working very well. We had more like a wider preparation. Vichy had a very specific preparation, and at the beginning he out-prepared us, but in long terms, time was on our side. But there were simply not enough games, and Vichy won the match deservedly. And then we had the match between Anand and Carlsen, the first match in Chennai, when I worked with Vichy, and there also it was very interesting, because there we managed to out-prepare Magnus in the first games, and Vichy solved all his opening with black and even had to play, but he failed to utilize therein his great chances in game 3. And then when suddenly Magnus on game 4 managed to play the Berlin and realized that Vichy is kind of not entirely ready for that, that psychologically changed the whole match, and I felt like Magnus calmed down, and we have seen then Magnus in top shape in the remaining of the games. But if he would have not felt in game 4 that, aha, finally I'm secure with black, then the match could have actually taken a completely different turn.
Very good. Peter, before we let you go, 2 quick questions. First, who's your competition in ping pong? Like, can anybody play with you in the chess world? And second, I think you also, like myself, have a great deal of admiration for Ding Liren and his unbeaten streak of 100 games. That was quite an extraordinary achievement. Your thoughts?
Yeah, well, actually, coming back first to Ding Liren, I think in 2009 I played in Nanjing. And it was a super tournament. At that point, Ding Liren was still very, very young, and I gave a press conference there, and I was telling the Chinese audience already that I think Ding Liren will be a superstar. And they were kind of surprised that why I'm mentioning that, because, okay, they already had superstars and he is still young, but I said, no, he will be one of the best players, I think. And finally, it proved right. I mean, I saw from his games and I saw his determination that he is really willing to invest everything for chess. And basically, chess is such a sport that the more you invest, the more benefits you are getting back. And somehow okay, those streaks of 100 games, you can never really expect those things. They just happen. But it was definitely incredible. He also played the candidates tournament, and he was unbeaten in the candidates, and not by playing for draws, because I actually felt really sorry for Dingley when after like 8 or 9 games of draws, people were just talking about, so you can only draw things like this. But when you look at the games, you saw that every game had a real content. And this is actually what really counts in my eye, not the final result. Simply that you are really willing to play real chess, and then finally it's a draw, or you are just playing for a draw. And I mean, Dingley's result was, that's why so impressive, because I think with white he's always very good player, and also with black he never shies away from complications. So if you really manage to get 100 games without a loss, it's some incredible achievement.
And ping pong? Who's your competition?
Ping pong, I mean, usually whenever I'm in China, it's also connected to China, then we play a lot of ping pong. The same tournament in Nanjing, which was actually Magnus's breakthrough, because, okay, he was already one of the very best players in the world, but after winning Nanjing in 2009 with an impressive score, that's when he became first-time #1 in the list, I think. And during those games, I mean, in the breaks, we were playing every evening table tennis with Magnus, with Rajabov, I mean, with the Chinese players. It was really a very nice gathering. But only after the tournament, we got to know that while we were playing table tennis with each other, Kasparov was helping and seconding Magnus Carlsen. And back then, this cooperation was completely secret. And after the tournament, I kind of felt like, well, if I would have known that information during the tournament, I would have maybe reacted a little bit differently also to those table tennis sessions. You know?
Very good. Peter, thank you so much for joining us and sharing your thoughts, especially your experiences about the World Championship matches and what it was like to be both a player and a second, and
the Sveshnikov. I mean,
and the Sveshnikov specialist. So really, the timing today was perfect that you joined us.
Yeah, I mean, thanks a lot for the invitation. It was also a pleasure, and keep up the show. It's always fascinating to follow you.
Thank you so much, Peter. Indeed, and it's so wonderful to get him on the air. But you know where we've never had him is in St. Louis, where we're recording the show.
You got to come to St. Louis. We'll
definitely
send you an invitation right here, right now. Join us. We're very hospitable. We like to have guests.
Well, indeed, thanks. Yeah. You got to get on that couch with Maurice.
Right.
But we will. We love to hear from you, and yeah, we're just gonna have to watch this game unfold as we got Peter on, and what might be the most exciting game of the match.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Before we go on break, just take us through what you think. Well, what the engine thinks, Maurice,
after Bishop
are the most concrete and best moves.
I mean, we went over the line. It's already C5 is looking massive.
You have to play C5.
Well, if you want to kill him, you do. Just C5.
And I assume he does.
It's a thematic move in the position.
Okay.
But the thing about it, that's a strange thing, and I'm totally fascinated by, is C5 is a pawn sacrifice. I mean, you are giving away your pawn. You're not giving away your
bishops
and the 2 bishops. And you're not giving away this pawn and then saying, okay, now I mate you. Now here's the attacking line. The quiet rook A E1, which by itself doesn't even contain a threat. Like, what's the next? Did you play rook A1 to sack?
No.
No. You're just playing yet another move. This move, C5, it's giving a massive advantage for all the dynamic reasons, the strong knight, the passed pawn, the beautiful diagonal, the line, and the chance to crack open that side of the board with H4. That stuff is deep. I'm sorry. That's way, way deep to understand and assess your pawn down. It just shows you how computers have become that much more advanced, because back in the day, they'd see the pawn up and they'd be scrambling to say, I'm better. I got a pawn. What are you talking about? Slowly but surely, counterplay started mattering more pieces and weak squares and pass pawns got more and more value, and then the computer starts saying, well, we don't care so much about material anymore. But this is extreme. This is, I just have a great position. I got all the play. What are you going to do, as my pieces are just fantastic and you don't have much to do? And as a matter of fact, after a move like this, I'm ready to just go hog wild, and slowly but surely I'm going to get you. This reminds me of what Alpha Zero did in its match against Stockfish. Remember how it was sacrificing pawns for compensation?
Right.
Like, here's a pawn. And all of us, I mean, top grandmasters were going, wait, where's the comp?
Right.
And then it would make some funky moves. I remember it made one move, Queen H1 as white. And you were like,
piece down.
What? A piece down? What? You cannot do that.
Bobby's going in for his first think of the game. And,
yeah, and that's the kind of position this is that will you assess it that it's just better for you straight upon down with generalized compensation, looks good, but not concrete. It's a hard move to play because you are definitely sacking a pawn and you're not going to see it back for a while.
Well, and the concept, though, could have been prepared pregame with a more natural-looking bishop f6 move that you might, Peter said, somewhere around bishop c3, but it's very feasible that it could have gone bishop c3, bishop f6, c5.
Exactly.
And the end.
Yeah.
So, therefore, Fabi is already aware of these pawn sacrifice idea, because that's a pawn sacrifice, too.
Absolutely.
Same thing, knight f3, queen f3 takes on c5. So, I think that Fabi is thinking about c5
it's a typical
right now.
sacrifice, by the
and
way.
I think
I've done it myself in King's Indian positions. I remember
King's Indian position, c5 is automatic.
Yeah, I remember when I first, was it, I want to say Kovalev. Is that the right name? Anyway, I remember seeing the idea for the first time, and then in a Real Lopez setup that transposed into a King's Indian against Boris Kryman. I remember I played, I'm going back, way back, folks.
Right.
Where I got to play this move c5, and it was a similar idea. You just looked at it and said, well, it looks like a pawn. My opponent took the pawn, and it was just pure long-term compensation. I eventually caught him on the light squares, then sacrificed my queen to get a beautiful mating formation. But c5 is a typical idea. You just, every time you look at it, have to assess, is it good now?
Right.
Is it good now? You know, do I need to play b4 first, or will that be a tempo loss? Because c5 is a risk. You go down a pawn, you see the idea, that's great, but you're playing the game. Thanks a lot for you guys analyzing and the computer helping you, but you're playing the game and you want me to give that guy, you know who I'm playing?
Yeah.
Him a pawn, and I don't see, it's my pawn, and I don't see clearly how I'm winning the game. That's the challenge. When you look at this position, optically, it definitely looks good for white. Black's has like cavernous holes in the position. This knight is very strong in the pass pawn. It looks really good for white. It's just somebody has to tell you, oh, by the way, you're down a pawn. Wait, what?
Well, if he does play c5 and goes on to win the game that way, then it would certainly fit on Anand's criteria of a fitting victory in the World Championship match.
Oh, yes.
But we're going to take a quick break as Fabiano thinks for the first time in the game, but so far he has won the opening battle.
And as we go to break, we're going to share with you a fireside chat. We're up to the Kasparov-Karpov rivalries of the 1990s. I hope you enjoy the clip.
Now, for me, as the Karpov-Kasparov World Championships,
right,
were really the time that I came into chess,
right,
my maturity, watching those matches. And talk about classic. I mean, it starts right away. Good guy, bad guy. I'm rooting for Kasparov immediately.
Right.
Good, right or wrong.
Right.
Because he's the young gun going what it looks like against the old guard.
Right.
And also somehow against the Soviet establishment.
Right.
Somehow. Maybe it's not the right storyline.
Right.
Maybe it's a little bit of propaganda. But that's what it feels like. And he has come on like a storm.
Right.
And you know, because you played him. I mean, he was 22 years old competing against this Karpov guy who has been dominant for 10 years.
Exactly. So we have 5 world championship matches between these two extraordinary chess players who are extraordinarily different chess players as well. So there is Anatoly Karpov, which to me, as a player, he's like the pinnacle of the positional, scientific, technical school from Steinitz to Botvinnik, to literally
To
Anatoly
Petrosian. We got to throw him in there.
To Anatoly Karpov. He is standing, on top of the shoulders of giants. And his technique, his practical play, he played very quickly. He was just a phenom. I mean, where was his weaknesses? How do you beat this guy? This guy's just incredible. And then there's this Garry Kasparov character. A page right out of the Michael Tall book.
Alekhine School. Alekhine was his favorite
School.
player.
And chaos. And they start their first match, 1984, under the rules that you got to win 6. You got to win 6 games. Draws don't count. 5-5, you play to the 6th victory. So you got to win 6. And it's like after 9, Karpov is just dominating this guy. He's up like 4-0. And after 28 games, it's 5-0. 5-0. I consider Garry Kasparov a GOAT, the GOAT, the greatest of all times. But he's losing that first match 5-0.
Well, he had beaten other players, but he had never faced somebody like Karpov. And Karpov was making it look easy.
Easy.
But then apparently Kasparov made a phone call to Moscow, called up his old trainer, Mikhail Botvinnik, who told him he had to stabilize things and make some draws.
Right.
And then we just kept seeing draw.
Draw after draw.
It was like
after
17 straight draws.
a rear guard action.
I mean, games that were just finishing quickly. And
Right.
now the chess world was wondering
Right.
what's going on.
Right.
The match has passed a month. And
2
it's going
months,
into
3
2 months. And we're going, what's going on? Is anybody ever going to win this? And
Right.
they're saying Karpov is looking like he's at the door of death itself.
Right.
The weight he's losing from the stress, unable to break through this youngster and win one more game.
Right. So it was game 32. That's he's supposed to win. I mean, he's going to win game 32. He has a winning position. Does Anatoly Karpov. If he wins that game, match is over, 6-0. I don't think we ever hear from Garry Kasparov again. I think
That's
it
a
was
serious statement. Really?
Yeah, he's lost. I mean, it's an easy demonstrable win. But somehow Gary saves that, then finally gets on the board with a victory. And then comes games 47 and 48.
Which you just jumped. Because
Yeah, I just jumped.
A lot more
Draws.
draws in between.
That was the rear guard action of the 15, 16, 17 straight draws that you were just mentioning. And then he puts through back-to-back victories. Does Garry Kasparov. And now the match is 5-3, but it's gone 6 months. Actually, it was kind of funny because do you remember the days of Ronald Reagan when there were so many people who were dying in the Soviet Politburo that he was complaining, every time I establish a relationship with one of the premiers, he dies, and they were playing in the Hall of Columns. Hall of Columns. These big columns, these big marble columns where they would bury these leaders. Anyway, the point was the match was being held in this very, very prestigious venue. And it went for like 16 months. 6 months.
Was it 6 months?
6 months.
I know it was a long match.
6 months. Sorry, I went 16. 6 months. My friend, our friend, Jonathan Tisdall, was there. He learned Russian. He was like the Reuters AP guy, stationed in Moscow. He thought he was there for a chess match. He stayed there for 6 months.
And trying to organize such a match, give it FIDE at least its due. You're trying to run such a match, and the match never ends. You say this cannot possibly happen. All those draws. When you think about something like Chigorin-Steinitz, for example, Chigorin versus Steinitz, they had a match that was 17 games long, and the first 16 games were decisive.
Exactly. One draw game.
One draw was the last game.
Right.
It's just guys to have a match where there's so many draws really did seem unimaginable.
Exactly. And so there was a big problem. Nobody's saying there wasn't a big problem, but the score was 5-3 when the president of the FIDE, Florencio Campomanes, made a very controversial decision. He annulled the match. He just said, that's it, match is over. We're going to play a new match starting at 0-0, but we're going to go back to the old rules of 24 games. So Karpov, of course, protested. He said, look, I'm leading 5-3. All I got to do is win one game. Gary says, that's fair. Let's go. And then comes the second match, and Gary wins, becoming the youngest world champion in the history of our sport.
In history, and then that starts a series like we have never seen and probably will never see again. The same two guys fight for the world championship 5 matches in a row. It's whether Karpov has to win the last game or Gary has to magically win the last game in order to tie the match to keep his title.
Everything you can imagine.
I mean, they were separated by something like 1 game. After all the matches, all the games that they played, their score was that close. Gary might be the greatest player of all time, but there was this one guy who he was not able to dominate.
Exactly. And statistically, it was just a push. And yet, having said that, stylistically, you couldn't have 2 more opposed players. Anatoly was this incredible technician. Gary, this incredible tactician.
So you had basically an immovable force versus an unstoppable
object.
And the two of them showed us matches that will sit forever in the history of chess, with some games that will sit forever as well. The two of them really played classic matches, vintage matches, that will go down as some of the greatest in the history of chess.
Welcome back to Today in Chess World Championship Edition. The men are deadlocked, the top 2 players in the world. But today, Fabiano, playing some lovely preparation, has gotten into a fantastic position against Magnus Carlsen. He did play the pawn sacrifice c5, and after a very quick knight takes f3, queen takes f3, pawn takes c5 by Magnus, he did not play the move that you were mentioning, Maurice, rook a e1, and instead played another move. I was thinking Fabi might actually think for a little bit between rook d1 and rook e1, because they both seem kind of appealing.
Very attractive, yes.
Rook d1 threatening d6, taking advantage of the pin on, just taking advantage of the quarter of the rook and the queen. I mean, it just seems like rook a1, the opponent's going to have to, Magnus is going to have to blockade with bishop d6. I can't imagine you can just let that pawn land on d6 in any way.
Right. So here, you're right. Two very compelling moves. Rook d1, as chosen by Fabiano. Rook e1 was the engine's first choice. And this is a difficult move to play because it doesn't, as you say, have a very concrete threat. Whereas the choice of Fabiano went to play rook d1, it does contain a very concrete threat of playing for d5, d6.
And why would you think that you want to move the bishop to d6? Is that because now that c3, h8 diagonal is even more vulnerable because you can't stick the bishop on f6 to counter it? So Fabi could easily think that this rook a1 is a really useful finesse to beckon the bishop to d6.
Oh, absolutely. Very attractive to make this concrete threat move. But the idea is, you know, rooks belong on open files too. And here it was about this move h2, h4, which Maurice had pointed out, breaking up the team on the king side and really just generating nasty threats and asking black, what's he going to do? He has two very, very passive major pieces, the rook on f8, the rook on b8, even the queen on d8 is not contributing, whereas all of white's pieces feel a lot more active. In any case, after knight takes f3, queen takes f3 takes, we did see this move rook d1.
And let's go over some sample lines. So after bishop d6, what
with
about
the threat of d6?
Yes, supposedly stop it with bishop d6. Now what about just coming in with queen to h5?
Queen h5 looks
so I'm just
very
attractive. I'm just trying to play queen h6.
And checkmate me.
Yeah,
yes.
Because now that your bishop's no longer on that diagonal, you can't play for bishop f6, kind of shoring up everything, right?
Right. Okay, so just if I force your hand a moment.
So I play queen h6.
Queen
that was
h6.
My intent.
Yes, of course. Threatening checkmate in one.
Subtle as they come.
Yeah, subtle as a ton of
and
bricks.
Rook f7, and this is where you can see why you'd want your rook on e1, because you could play rook e6 with the devastating threat of rook takes to g6.
Precisely. That was one of the reasons why the engine preferred the rook on the open file.
But still, nonetheless.
Well, I do have the idea of bishop f8, a forced evacuation. You're backing up on the move bishop fh, and your queen is going to have to force all the way back to h3. So that was, it's not that the move queen h5 is premature, not at all. It's why the move h4 is a prelude to queen, did I blunder something? I think I blundered something. I noticed the Mercury on the left just went, oh, I'm sorry, g5, g4. Oops.
Why does that win right away?
Queen takes h4.
Oh, okay, sorry. Yeah. And you're actually the one who's getting mated.
I'm the one who's getting mated in that particular case. But Maurice, rook on a1 to d1, a very attractive move. The engine's preferred rook a1 to e1. Does this spoil anything? Does this
bishop d6 played?
Yeah, like you said, and I completely concur. You don't want to see d5, d6 land on the board. That's a runaway criminal, that pawn on d6. So bishop d6 blockading seemed obliged.
Didn't someone write that pass pawn should be locked up like a criminal?
Yeah. Pass pawns should be put behind a lock and key. They're runaway key. He had a wonderful turn of phrase, and I've always said that. He was a terrible author, but wonderful turn of phrase, no question. Maurice, rook on a1 to d1, very attractive move. Does it spoil anything?
No, it's not as good as the other one, but the advantage is so big that white is completely controlling this position. And this threat of d6, of course, was monstrous. Bishop d6 blockading, natural. But now this move, queen h5. Immediately. Almost putting black in some kind of zugzwang. How do you move your pieces around now? What do you do? Move like bishop to g6, well, creepy crawly, a little bit closer to you with queen h6. We got a little mate threat here.
Right.
But notice what's happening to black's pieces. They're turning, they're beginning to get highly specific. And when they start getting too specific, they become stultified. Like they have to play exactly this role and nothing else. If you get into that situation, you have a problem. What I mean by that is this queen has to defend this pawn. So even after rook f7, he can't play queen f8. That's like a natural kind of move to chase the queen out because the pawn's hanging. The bishop has got a blockade. The rook's stuck. The rook's busy doing work. Suddenly your pieces are getting into this defensive functions, and now white's going to stop and go, okay, my pieces are flexible. How do I crack you in this position? Here, the engine gives rook f e1 as the next move, and you just feel flow. Rook is going to land now on e6. New threat to your position. How do you handle that threat? Rook e6 with sacrifices abounding on g6. What do? White has complete control of this position. Every white piece is fabuloso. I want to say fabuloso, but it didn't come out quickly. But anyway, beautiful knight, beautiful bishop, rooks on open files, queen posted up. Look at Black's game. Black is like this. I got a pawn, but the guy's going to come punch me in the face, and it's coming. Complete control of this position for white. Queen h5, a monster move, but it doesn't really matter. It's about the position and the pieces, and white is definitely dominant here, and the engines love white's position.
Okay, well, there you have it, Jen. Your queen h5 and queen h6 is getting 2 thumbs up by the chess engines.
Yeah, I was taking a look at Twitter. So the idea against your moves was what at the end?
Okay, so we saw the move bishop d6, queen h5. I went bishop g6. You went queen h6. I went rook f7.
So I missed something here.
And then it was rook e1, and after bishop f8, what the engine's conclusion was that this bishop is lousy. This bishop is not doing that much. All of white's pieces are really good. This rook on b8 in particular also not doing great. d5, d6, rook e6, bishop e5, lots of very nice moves, and white's pieces were just simply being so much more flexible than black's. Black's was being corralled into playing a very specific role. What did you call it? Not ossified, but calcified. Calcified. Very nice. Very nice.
D6 as a threat is
right. And black is basically on the back foot with no active pieces. So it was just a nice little judgment call there.
I even see rook e6, bishop f5 in some position as being an exchange sacrifice.
Sorry, say that again, Maurice?
So even if you stop me from playing, let's say you played bishop back to d6 to stop me, there feels like a rook e6, bishop f5 exchange sacrifice possible.
Now, even queen can go back to h6. It looks
that's what I mean.
Very attractive.
God,
moving the queen somewhere. Something like this is what I'm talking about.
Woo, Team Fabi.
Like,
that would be quite the position.
Crushing. Don't touch that rook. Matter of fact, this brings me to another point. We like it when there's convergence because
we've got echoes.
Yeah, we got echoes. We got echoes. This game between Anand and Kasparov, when I was looking at this position, I thought, wait a minute, I've seen something similar before. A challenger with the white pieces after a lot of draws going on the attack against the champion. This was game 9 of the 1995 World Championship match where Anand played this move before getting the action going against his queen. You cannot touch the pawn because the rook goes to the file, and after queen a5, bishop b6 wins the exchange. He dropped back, b5, breaking through on the queen side. This was the novelty, and after a trade, knight takes, and after bishop takes in this position, queen takes, jumping back to the position, rook a8, c4, e5, and now we talked about white getting dominance on the queen side of the board, and that b6 square, queen c8, a trade, a5, and after bishop f8, this nice little move, h3, queen e6, and rook to d5, a la that rook e6 exchange sacrifice. Now, in this position, he was not supposed to take the rook. Don't touch that rook, but Kasparov couldn't help himself and took. He could have played a move like h5 and wait, but after e5, queen g6, c5, e4, bishop e2. Look at the breakthrough, c5 happening and all the pressure, rook e5. Then he played queen to d7 to deal with a little bit of demonstration on this side, and then d6 with dominance. This is the kind of thing we're talking about, where white breaks through on the queen side, black doesn't have enough play, or any play. F7, F5 never got played, and white breaks through, picked off the B pawn. The game ended actually kind of nicely. Rook G3, Queen B7, and then Queen E6, King H2, a nice move, stopping the Rook H3 threat and daring you to play the move Queen E5 in this position, because Queen E5, I just ignore you. Take your rook and say, what discovery do you have that means anything at all? Kasparov didn't want to see this position, and he resigned. But the point being that breakthrough on the queen side by the challenger to effect. With those, once the breakthrough happens, you don't have counterplay, you die. So here we see the exchange sacrifice in this game.
We have a couple moves
that
on
could
the board,
happen.
Maurice. Alert. The move Queen H5 was not played.
Instead, he played more conservatively.
Move H3. And after,
so we're going to,
after which Magnus quickly played a move Queen E8, which it seems like a great move, Yaz. I hate to say it, being on Team Fabi. This move Queen E8 looks like a great move.
Very slow in Fabi's part.
Because it threatens, if you get up to the current position after H3, Queen E8.
We have it on the screen.
It threatens Queen to E3 check, and if you play like Rook E1, now I stick my queen on G6, which looks like a great square for both attack and defense. I'm defending the dark squares, but I'm also looking at getting my counterplay with G4. So, you know, earlier Peter said it's all about timing, and Magnus looks like he's down a tempo or two. Mm-hmm. And by bringing the queen into the action, it kind of looks like Magnus has rebounded time-wise just a little bit.
H3 is the problem. H3 was just slow.
Big time.
Maybe he didn't see Queen E8.
Well, the queen on D8 was really bothering nobody, and the queen on G6 is far superior. Placed, as you said already. You're protecting some crucial squares as black, and you're introducing your own source of counterplay with G5, G4. No question about it. H2, H3. That very, very hesitant move was the culprit, and maybe costing white a significant part of his advantage.
Huge mistake.
Queen H5.
Throwing away the better part of his advantage. This move was just too quiet. He needed to play actively. And by playing H3, giving his opponent a straight tempo to fix his position, now the queen goes to E8, and the angels are now saying white has a small edge at best. Before
you don't have to play Rook E1, though.
It was giving a huge. It doesn't matter what you play here. Doesn't matter. Yeah. It doesn't matter. You're already tossed away.
Knight C4,
your big
though?
advantage.
Is
now,
that any good? Knight C4?
Now you're asking, is it any good? Just your question is telling you the answer to what you did.
You can just do Queen G6
because
without the problem.
Now he's very active.
But you can see this might look kind of tempting that you're trying to you know, pile up on the D6 point. But the problem, I guess, is Knight C4, Queen G6 is a good reply, right? You're willing to give up the bishop and. How's that position look, though, Yaz, with the bishops of opposite color? I mean, wouldn't it still look a little better for white? Knight C4, Queen G6, knight takes, queen takes?
Well, it was funny. In the echo game that Maurice was showing us, that piece that was ensconced on B6 remained on B6. And I'm not that big a fan of what has just
This hasn't happened yet.
No. You were saying Knight C4. You wanted me to look at Knight C4. I thought that.
And I don't have time to maybe do
I thought
Rook
that
E1.
H3 was the wrong move.
Oh, but it was played, yeah.
Yeah,
but I'm just saying, what does Fabi thinking have in mind? Did he miss the idea of Queen E8, or did he think perhaps, what about this? What about H3, Rook E1, Queen G6, then Knight C4? Aren't I threatening something like Rook E6 maybe? Like some of these exchange sacrifices that we already talked about?
Maybe you are. I don't know. I'm just saying that from the very start, maybe Rook D1 I'm not a big fan of. I mean, again, if you were what should black be trying to do with his pieces? Well, obviously he should be trying to activate them. This rook on B8 is terrible, right? So to get this rook on B8 into the game, you're going to have to move your queen. Where does your queen belong? Well, I would say G6. So one of the starting moves, rook on A1 to E1, really stops you from getting your queen to G6. You're not going anywhere after queen G6.
So part of the brilliance of this move is actually the prophylactic qualities
and
of
just
it.
To shut
That's
down
amazing.
any activity by black. Now, in the game, after rook D1, bishop D6, we've seen players build up advantages, okay? But we've also seen hesitant moves.
Correct.
Once they get those advantages, it's sort of like they want to nurse them without taking any risks or anything like that. And after H3, Queen E8.
Maybe he thought something was
very, very sharp. Now,
How
you're
about
saying
that-
that white should try to get the advantage back. You want to play knight c4.
Or I want to look at lines like, what about like rook e1, rook on f to e1, with
Okay.
the idea of trying to get
rook e6
rook
in.
e6. Is there
Perfect.
anything with these exchange sacrifices? Either now, obviously with knight c4 it would be strong, but with what if I just start with rook e6? That just doesn't lead to anything. You just take twice, right? And there's just nothing there at the end of the day.
Well, now remember, you've
Let's
already
look.
one pawn down, so you've sacrificed a second pawn and you've sacrificed an exchange.
Yeah, I know, but I mean that bishop, my pieces all look awesome, so maybe I have some way to, like,
Well, your pieces were awesome before you sacrificed.
what if I
them,
play
exchanging
queen
the pawn.
h5 here?
Okay, so
I'm just
you
thinking
have
you might be, you just have,
you have a. I'm assuming you have
I
some.
mean,
threat
those
of queen
pieces don't
takes
look that
g5.
awesome. Queen g6, you can't play it. because
No,
you're-
of course not.
But
yeah.
I mean, this
I'm
position.
just looking.
What is?
I'm just trying to take on, like if you play queen e7, I was thinking I could like maybe take on g5, but you always have queen g6 at the end, right? That's a problem.
Also, what happens if?
Okay, maybe queen h5 is not that good. Do I have another move here?
Well, the computer says you have compensation, Jen. But
Okay.
it doesn't say you have any advantage anymore. It says like you've really spoiled things for white.
But what if I start with knight c4 with the idea of trying to get rook e1, rook e6
Sure.
in? The problem now is I've given you the time.
Let me just activate my rook. I'm dreaming of that rook on b8 playing actually a function. You know, for such a long period of time, whatever move number it has been, the rook on b8 has just been a spectator.
Well, now rook e6, and b7 is captured at the end too. Did I miss taking on b7 last time?
Well, the rook was on b8.
Rook is on b8, of course, right?
Yeah.
So now that I've beckoned you to d8, can I play this line with the b7 hanging? Oh, you're not taking on e6. I see.
Well, I'm not sure that
But now
black
I've
is
got-
unhappy.
So I've sacked this in exchange, and you're trying to
First-
trade off rooks. I'll probably play rook e1. I don't want to trade off rooks. This looks like compensation. Like,
Yo, you got
a lot,
but
a
hold
lot.
on. Before you start
B7,
claiming
95.
compensation, before you start claiming compensation, just like 4 moves ago, you had a huge advantage. Why wouldn't you have compensation?
I know.
Yeah,
I'm
huge
saying
advantage.
maybe Bobby thought one of these lines here is winning. Maybe he thought something when here was winning.
I'm sure he thought something.
Yeah.
But what he thought was not that good, unfortunately. The other thing to point out here is the thing about rook d1.
Sorry, which one?
You mentioned back before he played rook d1. The thing about rook d1 is it's pretty clear he's going to play bishop d6.
Certainly, there's no
right?
question about
I mean,
that. Yeah.
even if I don't play rook d1, he's going to play bishop d6. Like, does he have another?
Like black to move, what is black going to do? He's going to play bishop d6.
He's going to play bishop d6.
Agreed.
Right?
Agreed.
So that really, unless he felt black could also play bishop f6, which smells. But maybe that's what he supposed, that this move could be on the board, because rook d1 doesn't have a point if black's going to play bishop d6. It's like you made him play a move that he wants to play anyway.
He desperately wants
right?
to play
He's
bishop
really
d6.
trying to figure out how to reorganize his pieces. So he's thinking bishop d6, queen e8, queen g6. Those are his next several moves. Those are the most natural moves for him to play. So rook d1 may not throw, it throws away some advantage, because rook e1 insists on the same position, but with your rook on the open file, and you get going.
Exactly. Well,
unless he also felt like he wanted the other rook to go to e1. Maybe he wanted his cake and the chocolate and the ice cream and the gelato and everything.
And
so,
the icing, yeah.
Right? So he wanted to have both rooks on the files and the pawn on h3, so the guy gets no counterplay, and the guy's waiting around watching him beautify his position,
right,
and nothing is going to happen. So maybe that's what really went on in his mind, the issue of the wrong rook. Because if your rook is stuck on f1, then it looks like you don't have a future.
Right.
So it's possible that he was trying to double rooks instead. That is, place rooks on d1, e1, and now it turns out the timing was not quite right, and now he's realizing his big advantage has been frittered away. When you played c5, you wanted more than what he's getting now.
Yeah, and he really wanted to get his rook to e6. He was afraid of g4. Jen, we have a caller on the phone. Sorry.
No, I don't think so.
We lost it.
Yeah,
I'm sorry.
Hey, this position is really, I mean, even if we're not You know, we think the h3 is not the best move. It's not the best move. This position is still completely thrilling, Yaz. I mean,
no question about that.
This game could end up being a sacrificial victory for Fabi. I saw a tweet that's reporting that on chess.com, Grandmaster Hikaru Nakamura thinks that once you slip once against Magnus with him after playing c5, that it's likely that it will start to slip away more. And he's liking the position for Maggie now.
Well,
but you know, but Hikaru has also said from the very beginning that he thinks Magnus is a heavy favorite. So his opinion seems to like fit with his overall opinion, is what I'm saying.
Confirmation bias in his book.
That's what I'm trying to say, Maurice.
Exactly. His book. Well,
I think this game could go. There could be 20 different endings, and many of them are quite thrilling.
Sure. I do, however, agree with Hikaru that it does happen that when your opponent does start to slip, pardon me, when your opponent does slip, mistakes often come in pairs, or even worse, you know, you just get on the wrong horse and you keep riding it to death.
Absolutely.
So if you have slipped with h3, your opponent expects you'll slip again and again and again, and that's how you lose. You get the wrong concepts or the ideas, and as soon
as psychology though that you're saying, like,
no, it's just practical. I mean,
just that you have the wrong idea and you stick with the wrong idea.
Exactly. You see something in the position that has caught your fancy. I'm winning an exchange, and you do. The only problem is that's not the key factor. The key factor is your open king that you won in the exchange for. You trapped the guy's piece, and you won the piece, but oops, you left yourself an open goal net.
The other problem, I'm sorry,
please,
that position you got on the board.
Yes, please.
The h3 move. When someone's attacking your king.
Yes.
If you don't, we see this happen in the King's Indian all the time. White plays this idea of f3, sometimes h3, then he has a bishop on e2, he puts a knight on f2, and everybody stops g4.
Right.
Like, you are never playing g4 for all of eternity against me, right?
Correct.
Everybody stops the move g4.
Right.
And the light square bishop features very highly in that position, particularly for black. Now, with this move h3, white has slowed down g4. But has he stopped g4?
No.
Well, you make a couple of moves like in the lines you're talking about, queen to e8, rook to e1, queen g6. In that position, we're looking at moves for white like black's not starting to threaten stuff. Black is threatening g4 now. And so a quiet move, you better be ready to calculate if you play the move knight c4, because g4 is coming. And he's going to open up that side. And what do you do, in fact? Like knight c4, g4. What do you do? The engine's giving queen f2. Are you happy now? I mean, it's like, eek. Yeah, it's like, what's, no. I'm against knight c4, knight c4, g4.
I see. So knight c4.
Because you were analyzing the move knight c4.
Queen g6, right?
Right. So
that happened, but without the rook e1, I believe.
Is this position
now?
Yeah,
I believe we have that on the board now. Knight c4.
You play knight c4.
Queen g6.
All right. So now the move g4 is on tap. What's your next move? What's your next best
so
move?
Knight c4 was played.
Knight c4 was played. Queen g6 was played.
Not rook d8. I think
not rook
I
d8, queen g6, and now knight takes d6 played.
Now
and this was what I asked
d6.
you, I think, in the very beginning. Isn't white still a little better here? With the better bishop, I mean, you don't think the dark square
Bishops
better than the light square?
Colors. Pawn down. You've got a passer. This open diagonal, very, very compelling. No, I do appreciate that open diagonal for white. Not so easy to get your queen on this battery, by the way. But I do see
and we have knight takes d6, queen takes d6 on the board, followed by h4.
Whoa, I didn't see that
so what's
coming.
the idea of h4, Yaz?
Well, obviously he's hoping that he will be able to exploit the h8 square, maybe.
But I mean, does it allow for some endgames after g4, or
but h4,
giving back the pawn, or g takes h4? Do you have to transpose into the endgame after queen takes f4?
I have no idea what's going on
so
here.
After g takes h4, queen takes f4, does white have a lot of comp in that endgame because the weakened h pawn and then the d pawn?
Yeah, but I wouldn't want to do that. I wouldn't want to give up my
No, you want to stay in the middle
pawn.
because then you can't checkmate. You can't checkmate once the queens are off, right? You gotta.
Well, I'm seeing really double-edged play.
G4 right away. You're thinking, well, G4
no,
right away.
I'm thinking C4. Okay.
C4, okay.
Takes with ideas like bishop here, ideas of queen C5 check. I'm wondering who has the initiative and why. This bishop strikes me as a very good bishop, as does the bishop on C3. C5, C4 is just a plain old ornery, I want to counterattack. I still haven't fully understood the repercussions of H6 yet.
What about C4 just playing the queen F2, just trying to directly get on the diagonal and mate you before you have time to fight back?
Exactly.
I guess you could play rook C8 so that queen D4 could be met with queen C5.
To trade queens, perhaps?
Yeah.
Not exactly the follow-up I had in mind, I must say.
Because D6 coming so quickly
Exactly.
that even those endgames you might not be confident in, right?
Yeah, well, a lot of things to worry about, let us say.
Like a bishop landing on F6 after I take you on G5.
Exactly.
You guys
you
are analyzing those lines. We should let our viewers see some of that analysis, right? So C4, queen F2.
Well, no, I've helped White set up a battery.
I know, but let's just show the moves.
Oh, yeah, they weren't showing your board at that time.
Throwing out.
C4, queen F2, now it's showing up. So my idea is...
Oh, it wasn't showing up?
For some reason it wasn't, yeah. C4, queen F2, rook C8, because we got to get queen C5 in, and then we were saying that after queen D4, queen C5, you get what you want, but is it enough? I'm taking all your pawns and playing D6.
Queen takes C5 is playable there. White can
bishop, queen C5 and bishop B4.
And bishop B4 is dropping material.
Oh, that's just that. And then White's just great.
Then White is wonderful. You just win an exchange.
And I don't see any other way to play except for rook C8 because queen D4 is a real devastating threat.
Yeah, no, my C5, C4 was asking.
Oh,
too
you could
much
have
of
moved the other rook maybe, but that feels weird.
No.
Yeah,
I would stay away from this. I would stay away from C5, C4. See, right now it's hard for White to get his queen on this diagonal, long diagonal, for the checkmate. So first of all, what is wrong with H6? Fabi obviously is trying to break up the team on the king side, and Queen H8 check is not devastating. I mean, Queen H8 is not ended the game with a checkmate or something like that.
This reminds me of something, though. This reminds me of.
So what's wrong with H6?
This reminds me of.
Oh, you've got it.
This reminds me of Fabiano Caruana versus Shakhriyar Mamedyarov in Batumi just a month ago.
The Olympiad.
The Olympiad, but even better.
Okay.
Like this position you just described, because after Queen E5 in this position, he has a lot more pieces on. In that game, he only had a queen and a rook on. But the idea of just harassing the king never had security, and he just bothered it and just kept harassing it until finally the guy cracked, and then he just pummeled him. That was a great game, by the way, big game against Azerbaijan. And in this position, Fabi would dream about having, because
a dominant queen,
exposed king, opposite colored bishops, pass pawn. He'd be back in business in this position. No question about it. I mean, he's going to just start torturing you. This threat is on the board. Your king is forever exposed. It's not a win right now. It's not that kind of position. But, boy, it's looking really difficult in here. And don't forget, this move is coming. So he can just go for material. And you may not lose by mate, but you're going to suffer.
Just continue the line. Rook E8, rook on B8 to E8. You give me a check. I'll go back to G8. You can go take on C5.
Let's just.
You want to do this one?
Nurse.
Oh, okay. I was thinking rook E2.
We won't give you any. We'll let you figure this one out.
Okay.
D pawn is fast.
Okay, rook E2.
Rook E2. What you want to play? You want to play?
I want to go bishop E4.
But this is a move that stops you all the time, right?
Well, it's double-edged.
Okay, I'm going to try to queen.
Really? I think I've got at least a perp, don't I? Rook takes G2 check.
Oh, rook G2. You had a surprising one. Okay.
Yeah.
Oh, so this is such a
you want to play like
moment.
this?
Yeah. Bishop E4 check.
And if I move, well, you play Queen H4 coming. I'll go here.
Sorry to interrupt ourselves, but we do have a phone call from New York.
Do we still have a phone call from New York?
Do we still have a phone call?
Yeah, so right in the middle
We're
of
in
the pitched battle, you want a phone call from New York.
Well,
it better be about this pawn becoming a queen on the next move.
We should
or
have
I'm not going to be happy, because this is sharp stuff, and I'm sure our fans want to know about this than a question on the phone. Okay.
Well, we will keep an eye on the live board as well, because this game is just really opening up right now, and the last hour as well.
I think Magnus is taking the pawn on
H4.
So
just a quick question from New
He's
York.
taking it?
Let us know your name, and we will keep an eye on the game while we take your question. Okay, so it doesn't seem like they're there anymore.
Apologies.
But that, of course, is analysis. Let's keep an eye on the analysis and the live board. As H4, you said that Magnus has taken on H4.
No. Has he?
No, I thought you said that. So
no, he
H4,
has not, but I think he wants to.
H4 is the last move on the board. And we're wondering, is Magnus going to try to play H6? If he takes on H4, as Maurice is reckoning, what's the line here? Is there a way for us to keep queens on the board? Yes, because it looks like the queen trade is not exactly what White has been playing for, right? So what else can we do after G takes H4? Can we play for Queen H5 there, or is Queen G6 just going to delay the inevitable?
I don't know. Aren't you afraid of your king? Like.
Yeah,
there is
I am.
H3.
That's why I'm wondering if I might just have to play Queen takes F4 and reckon with the fact that I'm going to win your H4 pawn. I have a better bishop still. Maybe White can still claim something. But I just want to say, like, is there a way for us to keep the ladies on the board? Is there something with Rook E1 perhaps? Idea of Rook E6, or are you just going to play Rook E8?
Well, Rook E1, I definitely see Bishop E5
exactly
as a chance to skewer an exchange, and so I probably have to play Rook E8 just as you're suggesting.
And then if I take twice and play Queen H5, again, you can just stick something on G6. But do you want to take a look at that?
Sure. Okay, so from the starting position, you reckon that Magnus should take on H4?
Well, if he does.
Okay.
I'm looking for ways to keep the queens on the board rather than Queen takes F4, which is kind of what it seems like Magnus wants, right?
Okay, so Rook takes, Queen H5. So you reckon this would be the consequent
I think the problem is Queen G6, again, a good attacking move, good defensive move, and that's the problem.
I have to stop Queen takes E8. You mentioned this guy, I wasn't mentioned. Ooh, yeah. This, or...
Am I messing things up?
F3.
This, or...
Bishop E4.
Or this? I mean, there's...
You're scared for right now.
Well, there's counterplay. I mean, it doesn't... It's not like there's play on one go anymore.
No, not at all. Not at all.
There's F3, Bishop E4, Rook E2, all attack.
Could I apply to play like G6 at some moment instead of...
Well, you...
so I played Queen H5, forcing you to play Queen G6.
You did?
And if I take... Yeah, it's just not... the pawn's not so fast that you're...
Well, you've sacrificed 2 pawns, and I'm not saying you don't have compensation, but you were definitely better before you went into this line.
All right, because you can always blockade with Bishop T7, right?
Yep.
That's a good starting move right now. I'm not 100% sure you have a threat.
I was going to play Bishop F6. I thought that, but that's not a threat either, right? So King F7.
So if you want to play D7, I'll go with D8 and round it up.
So no, this is no good then. So is there any way to keep queens on the board, or after takes on H4 is my best play as White to simply play Queen takes F4? Let's take a look at that. Is that anything for White to write home about?
Well, as White, I would be very, very happy to get rid of this F4 pawn, as I feel that's the most threatening pawn, and Black will have no choice but to trade queens, because you're not going to going to countenance the battery with the queen on E5. So let's just imagine takes. I'm feeling that this is spinning towards a draw. I don't know. Should I play H3, by the way, or should I just? Your rook's not like that great on H4, is it? I mean, you're not. It's not.
But when you play H3, you're trying to like keep the pawn, right?
Yeah. Well, I'm a pawn grabber, so you should expect that I would try to keep my pawn.
A pawn grabber and a pawn keeper.
Yeah. Well, harvest and keep.
And then D6, I run away with a pawn. Now what? Because now Bishop D7.
Bishops of opposite colors, right? and good.
Yeah, bishop d7 is just a good blockading move. But what about bishop d7? Then I take on h3.
Or what if
Does
I
that
take
do anything?
why do I have to blockade this pawn? Why can't I just take on g2? What happens?
You're saying if d7, you just have rook d8, but then maybe I have some tactics.
With rook g2, rook d2.
I was thinking of, I was thinking instead just playing d7 here. And then I was wondering if I had some tactics with like, I want to try to like get my bishop on, take on f5 and get bishop f6 in, but it's not quite working, is it? Maybe rook d5, like after.
Oh, rook d5 is good.
Rook d5, well, it's black's move after d7.
Yeah, rook d8, rook
so rook
d5.
d8, rook d5. You can't take with the rook because bishop's hanging, and if you take with the bishop,
well, then rook g5.
then I have bishop
check.
f6.
No, rook g5.
Rook
check
d5
is
check me. That's good.
Problem.
So.
No, that's winning.
Yeah.
Bishop g6 would be forced, but then you
But
can
then
just
there's
take on f8.
And bishop f6.
Yep.
That's what I was trying to get that bishop to f6. Yeah, so that means that after d6.
He did take on h4, by the way.
After d6.
Did Magnus.
Magnus, yeah.
So is there still some poison in that variation then after queen f4, takes an f4, h3, this d6 move, maybe you have to blockade rather than take on g2. So h3, d6, maybe you have to play bishop d7. But then I get to take on h3 myself.
Yeah, I'm thinking that in a bishop, well, first of all, I'm not really sure what I'm playing for as black. If I'm h3, I'm trying to play for an advantage.
Right, yeah.
Clear.
Keep your pawn.
I'm trying to keep my
pawn keeper.
Rook d8, I'm playing to make a draw and to trade pieces, right? So I'm not exactly sure who's playing for advantage after queen f4, rook f4.
It looked. I was thinking that White could still try to like push this initiative and calculate the lines with g6, right?
Okay, so assuming this is the breakaway pawn and the most dangerous pawn in the position, let's assume I'm playing for a draw and a blockade of your passer.
So that now after d6, you're just going to stick your bishop on d7.
Something like that, right? To just where is my best square?
It's not that easy. The bishop f6 is coming if you move your bishop.
Right.
Bishop. So if I move my bishop, you'll drop your bishop inside my position.
Yes.
Just a second. Okay, so do I have to play something a little bit awkward like this then?
And now.
If you play d6, let's go here. Okay, so I want to play bishop d7 and bishop c6. And in this case, I'm trying to blockade the pawn.
And now if I take and play d7.
Take and play d7.
You just have rook d8. I don't have the f6 square anymore, right? Okay, so.
Well, what do you have against rook d5? We've been talking about this.
Yeah.
Nothing. Rook d5 is a very.
And c5 hanging too.
Correct. Oh yeah. Well, I'm much more worried about this.
Mate.
Mate does tend to end the game. Oops.
And d7 is a threat now. It looks like.
Yeah. Well, bishop g6. You mean you play rook takes f7?
No, the king comes in the game.
Yeah.
Be a little bit careful.
You don't have time for d7. I just take your rook and it's just a trade. Except you lose your valuable pawn.
Exactly. That wasn't good.
And you get out of dodge on f7 again.
But,
queen takes f4 has been played.
But you can't change the position in that position.
So queen takes f4 on the board. Maggie has gone for the queen trade.
So rook takes f4. We're thinking after rook f4, rook f7. Maybe that's not the best move. Maybe I have to just drop back with my bishop immediately. Bishop d7.
And if bishop f6?
And if bishop f6. And still, I don't quite have the zen of the position still
But it feels to you like black should be able to hold on
to
the squares.
Yeah, I just...
Considering the other positions that Magnus has hold on to.
Well, the other positions were really much more scary. When you were getting your queen on h6 and your rook on e6.
Oh, for sure.
I really felt that Fabi, was throwing the patties. Here, it feels like black has a lot of defensive resources.
And he played a beautiful move.
What did he do?
Much better move than the ones we are suggesting.
Queen takes f4?
Was played. Rook takes. And then move h5.
okay, that looks like a very, very fine move.
to stick a bishop on g4.
Put a bishop on g4.
Discouraging.
And, you know, I guess if you could ever force the trade of rooks and allow for king f7, that would be a very easy way to shut down.
Here comes the art of defense by the best player on the planet.
Yeah.
And
Magnus
this is one of the
Carlsen.
problems we see when you don't play the best moves and really prosecute your advantage. Defense starts to take hold, and we have a completely different kind of game. And now, instead of it being just a clean win, it looks like now Fabi's let this slip. His h3 was one tempo too slow. And rook ad1 wasn't the most precise move, but that was forgivable. But h6, h3 was not the move he wanted to play. And now we see why you missed just one move, and that's it. And unfortunately, this is looking more and more, not just because you might be Fabi fans, but just in general as chess fans, to see 8 straight draws to start a world championship, that's a record. That ties the record, in fact, of the game we talked about, the match we talked about, Anand versus Kasparov in 1995. That will tie the record with 8 straight draws, and it's really looking like we will get a tie now, and doesn't mean we're going to have 9 straight break the record in any match to start a world championship match. They're so close, you have to take chances. I got to give him credit. He played c5. He just didn't find the most incisive way to continue with his pawn sacrifice. He played a little bit too close to the vest with his moves.
Open Sicilian. Not only did he play c5, just his opening choice worked out so brilliantly, and it's kind of sad for Fabi fans if he doesn't manage to squeeze anything out of this position. I mean, I don't even know if he's better, but that said, if he doesn't end up winning this game, it's really sad because it was like the perfect situation. He kind of kicked Magnus with the information advantage, as Anand said, got a massive edge on the clock, great position, and Magnus must have been terrified. I mean, knowing that he had not looked at this line or as carefully, obviously.
Right, and the slip up because f4 and g5, Magnus did not force Fabi to play a move like b4 or rook a4, so Fabi got everything he wanted, and he spoiled it with this one bad move h3, and it kind of forcefully reminds the game 3, I believe, where he played bishop on c1 to d2 instead of rook takes a5, and in the post-match press conference, Fabi just said, you know, one bad move, and I spoiled everything. And it's really remarkable that this move h2, h3, it doesn't even feel that bad a move. It's not that bad. You make luft. You do nice
remember what
things.
Peter Leko said? Tempo,
In sharp
tempo. In sharp positions.
Yeah.
This is not a slow, blocked position where you can say, the guy can't do anything at all. He has no moves.
I've got the luxury.
I got a luxury. I'm going to improve over here and improve over there and play quiet. No, in sharp positions, timing is everything.
Right.
And when you wait, the guy finds something to do, and suddenly you look and you say, what happened to my advantage? And that's exactly what happened here. We have a semi-open toward open position, and 2 bishops and queen and dynamic possibilities, and you don't have the luxury of playing this kind of waiting move. And he played h3, waited a little too long. Magnus found, of course, this idea of queen e8 with the queen going to g6, and that's all she wrote. That was it. All of a sudden, the game just transformed itself, and Fabi had to hurry up and play this idea that he played instead of allowing black to get the counterplay with g4, exploiting the move h3, as a matter of fact.
I see.
So just poor timing on his part, one quiet move. And I'll add, Jen, you mentioned the right opening, the information advantage. Let's add time on the clock.
Yeah, that was huge.
It was massive time advantage.
Like 40
it was
minutes or something.
Yeah, exactly. It was
even more at some
It was
point.
huge.
Even more than 40 minutes. Yeah.
Magnus was in so much trouble, and now to liquidate into an endgame where he can just show off his incredible endgame virtuosity, that's not what you wanted.
And I'm boldly going to make a prediction that I don't think this means Fabi's out of contention for the match, not at all, but I boldly predict that Magnus is going to put the Sicilian to rest after this game. I think next time Fabi plays e4, Magnus is going to play e5. I feel like the Sicilian was a quasi-bluff.
Right.
You know, I know the open Sicilian lines are the most testing, so while you play this Rasalimo that I feel like black's good, I'll keep playing it. As soon as you play the open, I'm going to switch over to e5.
Bluff. Right. I mean, a missed opportunity, big time.
That's my feeling, because I feel like you know, he got such a bad position here, Maggie. I don't
He
think
really did.
I don't think he went, because who knows,
He
they
got
could have a
caught
couple
out.
things. He might just go for double king pawn, especially because of a lot of the postulating that we've had about how Maggie doesn't mind seeing a tiebreaker. That said, Fabiano's team could have something really great prepared against double king pawn too,
Sure.
because that was their main preparation, no doubt, going into the match.
No doubts about it. But could you put the move h5 to the test for me, Maurice? Why do we think that this move is such a great defensive move? Assuming d6, right, with a similar idea of rook d5 followed by rook g5, how would the line go? Why is Maggie shutting down the position? Bishop g4. You're attacking my rook, so I assume I have to take on f8.
Right.
And I assume I have to play rook to d5. You're attacking my rook on d1. And I can put my bishop on e7, perhaps, yeah? Is this
strong.
just dead or draw or something?
Okay, how about this move?
Okay, I think this is where Jennifer was hitting me with a bishop f6 and a d6, d7 idea. Aha, okay. So I don't have time for d7. That's a rook and pawn ending.
I'm already up a pawn, so be careful.
Well, your extra pawn is a double H pawn, dude. So
no, I'm
d7
saying, but so if you're trying to do something, you're not. You're just liquidating down. If you play d7, it's to liquidate down into a drawn endgame, right?
No, sorry. I'm just analyzing d7, bishop d7, rook d7, king f6, rook b7, and aren't I playing rook b6, check takes a6? I thought it was better, but maybe it's still a dead draw or something. But a little bit better for Fabi?
I can't imagine.
I'm having trouble imagining it too, but okay.
I mean, first of all,
I don't
first
want
of all,
to.
if I play this move, if I play this and you wanted to argue that this position is winning,
I wouldn't make that a. I wouldn't bet my life on it. No.
He puts his rook behind the pawn.
The rook goes behind the pawn. Yeah. Okay, but go back to when we had bishops on the board, because you did something, and I could have played bishop takes h4. I think.
Correct. Where are you putting your rook next?
You've got time to blockade on d7. No, very good. Then it's just rook c8 was a very good move. Rook c8 was a very good move.
This is hard to believe. I mean, now you look at the position and you can feel the draw coming. You just feel it. It's not. There are no points to punch at. Really, it's a puncture. It just looks like black is going to solidify in position, and we're going to have
a pity.
One where opposite colored bishops can definitely show great attacking chances. But here, until you show the attacking chance, you got zip. Like what are you going to do? Your d pawn optically is not just optically; it is potentially very powerful, very potent. If only the guy could just give you his light squared bishop, so that you could keep pushing. But here it's just negatory. H5 is a really good move. A really good move. Lifting the mate threats, by the way. All those mates he was worried about are gone. Bishop will go to g4.
With the tempo. Trade of rooks.
Trade rooks. Bring the king closer. This is Magnus. We are talking Magnus Carlsen, right? You can keep looking. You're not going to trick him here.
Superb move. No question about it, Jen. And another swing and a miss. I mean, we've seen a lot of swings and misses in this match, as you have to, not only do you have to play really, really well, but the precision required is on a great level.
You're not allowed any mistakes.
Not even
nobody's
the
blundering, let alone
inaccuracy.
Well, we've had a couple mistakes in this game, but no blunders. That's for sure. I mean, we made the mistake for Fabi being h3 and the mistake for Magnus being the original concept with g5.
But there are no blunders in the match except game one.
That's right.
In game one, the only blunder, and that was Magnus.
Right. So we were thinking in terms of inaccuracies, which were moves that cost you 4/10 of a pawn
or less,
by the engine or less. Then we were thinking in terms of mistakes, those moves that cost you a point shift, a whole
Well,
pawn.
there was that for sure.
There was
that.
a
H3
mistake.
was that.
And then the blunder, which is greater than a 1.5 point swing.
H3 might have been that too, actually.
H3 might have been
H3 was such a huge swing in the game. Because,
right
well,
back here.
You know,
this was the crucial
maybe you have
moment.
to add it up. Maybe you have to add up Rook D1 and H3. If you add up the net effect of the reduction of advantage, you'd say those two moves really put away White's hopes of getting a
What do
real
you think
advantage.
Bobby missed? Do you think is it possible that he missed this maneuver Queen E8 to G6? Because like that seems like maybe he thought he had a little bit more time, just chill H3 and I'll play.
You know, one of my suspicions is, no doubts about it, he looked at Queen H5. He probably got to some position like this in his mind's eye, and he said, why am I trying to achieve this, without really making a judgment as to, oops, what is my opponent's next move going to be? You know, this E6, great. The rooks are great. White's rooks, all of White's
Well, yeah,
pieces.
or Bishop F5 here, maybe that was okay. You guys, we already looked at that, right?
Yeah, but I mean.
But then you're switching after Bishop G6. You're switching to.
Well, I'm just chill. You know, no problem. I'll.
Right, but that might be the move, like Queen F3. It's like weird to play for Queen H3, and it's like a triangulation of the queen. You see that?
Yeah,
it
it is.
I mean?
It's a very strange one, but it really is like exactly here where the move H2 H3 really does, and it doesn't look like that bad of a move. I mean, if I saw this without really just, I was flashing through the game and replaying the game and somebody played H3, I wouldn't have my hair stand up and go, oh my gosh, what a mistake.
But question,
Blunder.
was there something in between the two moves? Like suppose just Rook on F to E1. Like that's a kind of logical looking move, isn't it?
No, because then
there's
he's really
G4.
afraid about G4.
Right, G4 and Queen H4.
And that's
and
what
after
the
Queen F2, there's G3 now. Because of the Bishop on D6, yeah.
Yeah, now the problem is you can really make yourself actually quite afraid that you've allowed your opponent too much counterplay.
Yeah, whereas in the other lines, your bishop, when we played Rook DE1, or your bishop wasn't on D6 yet, so the character of the position was a little different. You couldn't play G4 because I could take on F4 a lot of the time.
Yeah, and Queen H5 is just sidestepping this G4 counterattacking business.
And I think
a lot of moves played, guys.
Okay, please.
A lot of moves played. We actually see it up here in the position on the right.
Update us after H5. What was played?
Rook E1.
So there was a long think by Fabi before he played this move, Rook E1.
And then came
Bishop G4.
Okay, threatening the rook.
Rook F6.
Rook F6, okay.
And now Rook takes, Bishop takes, and that's where we're at.
Rook takes and Bishop takes, so we're up to date. So, I mean, he still, Fabi still has dreams of...
hopes and dreams.
Hopes and dreams of playing Bishop takes H4, D6, and Rook E7. That would be a dream position for White to get.
The rooks can come over the board very easily here. King F7 and Rook E8 look like...
well, once again, you're being a party pooper there, Maurice.
Well, I guess I can play Rook F1.
I want to
just to
keep
the rooks on, but only because I'm being stubborn.
King G6 and D6. Well, here I would rather have the white pieces for sure because I've got the most important pawn in the position.
But
can't Magnus do a little bit better than that? So this is the current position.
Yes.
Huh. Okay. He has no time for Rook D8 and Rook because the bishop now covers the D8 square. Does it make sense? Can I try to maintain the pawn on the king side with H3?
Rook E7? I think you want that to happen. Now you're giving a guy everything.
I'm not completely convinced yet. Can I play this? Or should I take on G2 first? I don't know. I want to play Rook D8.
You can't. Rook D8. Can I sack? I win a piece.
I go here.
I take your bishop.
Oh, I see. Okay, so I take on G2, you take on G2, right?
No. I play
I'm
D6.
sorry. D6.
Why not?
Whoa.
You're trying to. I mean, if I get D7, you're asking me to win.
D7. I'm not asking you to win. I don't want you to win. No, oops. I
have D7 again, don't I?
Can I play bishop takes?
Yes,
Rook.
you can. Okay, hold on.
So wait, there was Rook G. So what was happening on Rook G7 check? King H8. Oh.
Now,
now Rook G after G4, Rook F6, D7. You just have.
Sorry, what, Jen?
I'm just trying to find a way to win.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. Yeah.
What do
so
you
Rook
have?
F7.
You don't have a threat, do you?
I'm threatening to play Rook takes F6.
Okay, so Bishop C3.
Just stepping off the diagonal. That looks great.
Yeah, okay.
Okay, for some reason, I had it in my mind that I had this very big threat of
Rook
Rook
F1
F1 check, and it's not a big threat at all.
You need a Bishop H3 move. Wow, that's pretty aesthetic.
It is. So we're expecting King F7.
Don't let that Rook get on E7. That's gonna
Yeah, we're expecting this move King F7, Bishop H4, Rook E8, Rook F1.
And now you play the King on G6, which gives you this Rook F6 tempo later. Why can't I play King G8? I don't have any
Just
tempos.
back up. I should be putting my Rook obviously behind the pass pawn with something like Rook E5 to
or Rook
D4.
or even E2
Rook
behind,
E2
just to really harass you.
To D2. Yeah.
Because I can also play Bishop D7, Bishop C6, blockade and counterattack.
On a good day, you get your Rook on the second rank.
Yes.
And then you put your Bishop on C6, attack
Correct.
G2, and
if
you're happy.
If your pawn starts to move down the board.
Fair enough.
I mean, this
Fair
is
enough.
This is way too drawn.
Way too drawn. What does our social media world reckon? Was it a huge miss, this H3 move?
I think a lot of, Anish Giri said it's a draw now. Nicholas Hushinbeth, who has been tweeting about the match pretty frequently, said that he actually had this exact preparation on his chess base file, which he shared. I guess no point in keeping it secret anymore.
Wow.
So he was like, I feel really proud. My preparation apparently wasn't too bad.
Nice.
Yeah,
nice.
Good one. Kostya Kavutsky says that he was really thrilled by Peter Leko's commentary on the Sveshnikov. Indeed, what perfect timing. Andrea Bronstering says she really likes the current position of the 8th game. And I also saw her tweet earlier if anyone was covering the Women's World Championship while the championship was going on. And the answer is yes, we are talking about the Women's World Championship every day. So tune in to Today in Chess for that. And Maurice, speaking of the Women's World Championship, today's game, you've got it up on the board. So
Yeah,
one for
it's
Andrea.
amazing that you were tweeting because I wanted to say there was another miss as well in the Women's World Championship. As soon as you guys started talking about a miss, I was like, oh, let's get to that game because Katerina Lagno with the black pieces could have won this game if she had found the right moves, but it was a dog fight. Bishop E3, Queen B2, Juwenjun with white. Currently, white is even materially, but under pressure as this pawn was captured. Knight E2 and Bishop H6, and you see black is trying all kinds of tricks. Knight E5 is a threat now because both pawns are pinned. Bishop F2, G5. Talk about a dynamic, aggressive game. This move, G5, Rook B1, and now Queen A3, Queen to B3, looking to trade queen. She says, let's keep it going. G takes, and Rook F8. Neither king castling. You want to talk about asymmetric pawn formation. Pressure on the B line, weak E6 pawn. She got terrified of the idea of Queen E6 in this position. Actually, a good move for her. Instead, she played Queen F3 and allowed Queen takes A2. And now this move, King to G2, and here she had a really good chance. You talk about a miss. The move Rook G8 check would have been very strong here. Notice the queen is pinning across this line, and the D pawn is hanging. Your king goes to H3, and suddenly the move Queen C2 could have been played with Queen F5 check, and black is in business in this position. This is how she could have really put the pressure on white and probably won the game. I don't know if she was any time pressure, however, because after King to G2, she immediately shut everything down with Queen D5. Offered a queen exchange, which her opponent gladly accepted and went into this endgame. And now with a lot less on the board, she took Rook C7, Knight D8, Rook A7, and they very quickly. I'm going to jump to the final position. Got to this one, repeating moves, and the game ended in a draw. So a moment here as well. Missed opportunity for Black. She'll be back in her hotel room. Will Katarina thinking, man, I could have hunted her down. Fabiano is going to be feeling the same way today. That is a challenger, could have defeated a champion in this game, and Fabi, the challenger, could have defeated a champion as well. So we see in both championship matches, the challenger did not rise to the occasion and let the champion off the hook.
Coulda, woulda, shoulda, huh?
That's how it goes.
Back to back. Ooh, those near misses, especially with the black pieces, Jennifer. I mean, that's what we always thought, that having the white pieces is such a great advantage. This match has proven that not to be the case. But
I don't think Magnus wants to repeat white tomorrow. And if he does, he's not playing that same line at the Sicilian.
I think that he would love to repeat white tomorrow.
Oh, tomorrow's a rest day, so
I know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, of course.
Okay, so we are in this position, and we are expecting the world champion to play the move King F7, returning this pawn on H4 in order to get his rook activated. Remember, this whole game, this rook on B8 has basically been a spectator to the proceedings. Any rook trade would precipitate an easy draw, so we would anticipate Fabi retaining the rooks, and then after a move like D6, dropping his rook into the second rank and getting ready to defend with bishop D7 to C6, and the reckoning is a draw is inevitable, thanks to the active black rook in this case.
Yeah, and what's your take on how this affects the match going forward? Fabi is so cool. Ice water in his veins, as we saw in the Ice Bucket Challenge that he executed right before he went 7-0 at the Sinkfield Cup. But at the same time, this must be a little annoying, right? Getting such a great position. It's an unusual type of chess disappointment, right? Because it's a combination of things.
Exactly.
You didn't lose the game.
You didn't lose the game.
And you have two whites left out of the next four. Yeah. So it's not like all the news is negative.
Not at all. But you do feel like you lost something. Like a missed
You're going to have to clean out your system right now, given that you had such a great chance. I mean, you were gearing up. You played C5, and you spent all that time thinking about C5, gearing up to be aggressive, only to fall back and be passive and play the move H3 to stop what looked like black creating some energy, missing the move Queen H5. And I think Kramnik said it best. Kramnik said, it looks like he's not quite on form. Like that kind of form. You're playing against a world champion. You need that kind of form. And you got to put it together from the opening to the middle game to the end game. It's not enough to just get a good position. Everybody gets good positions. It happens to everyone. You can get a good position. Congratulations. Can you prosecute your advantage from opening, middle game, end game? That's how the game is played in all three phases. And he didn't show it this game.
I really feel like, okay, pardon the metaphor, but in some ways Fabi had really hooked his fish. He had finally caught Magnus out. He's just kind of getting the net ready to bring the fish in, and just this let it slip, and he got away just like that. And it just amazes me that it shifted so dramatically on a move that really didn't look that bad. That move H3, I agree, it's soft. But when you're in white shoes and you're seeing G4 and you're seeing Queen H4, H3, you could somehow convince yourself it's okay, and I've got all the advantages still pertinent in the position, and then just perfect play by Magnus, and he's out of the woods again.
You say perfect play.
Yeah, after the move H3.
But was it perfect play? It was just Queen E8, Queen G6. There was nothing else. It wasn't anything that he had to do. Just Queen E8, Queen G6, right? I mean,
here he had to avoid.
Of course, he had to avoid the end game, but I mean the middle game. He had to avoid the middle game.
H5.
H5 was a great move, but not a necessary move.
That's a star move.
It was a great move, but it wasn't a necessary move. I mean, only a few moves got played. Right. Let's not overstate. It's not like he came up with the most spectacular, amazing. Look at that sequence. Right. He just had to find Queen E8, Queen G6, and then the rest were well within anybody's tolerance.
Right.
So once he saw Queen E8, which by the way, I would say, guys
everybody
like Nakamura,
would play it. Yeah.
All the way down the rating scale. There's a lot of ways down the rating scale that would say, yeah, I want to get my queen in the game now. Let me switch it, get it over to G6, and boom.
Right.
So it's not like Magnus suddenly played like a hyper genius to save himself. He's not like, oh my God, he has to do some kind of Keanu Reeves Matrix duck bullets, right? And or maybe stop the bullets.
Like in Game 6.
Right. He didn't have to do any of that to save this game. He just had to find Queen E8, like, what's wrong with Queen E8? Put my Queen on G6 and just, make some moves and boom, 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 and you got zip. And it was fast. It was really fast, by the way. Only about 6 or 7 moves, and suddenly the position's equal. So, no, this is Fabiano's slip. This is not Magnus providing any kind of spectacular genius ideas. He got himself in a very bad position, and Fabi let him off the hook.
Agreed. Rook E8, by the way, Rook F1 on the board. As expected, the players are going down our drawing line. We are now expecting the move King G8 to be played, and it looks like, well,
it comes back to
our
that
8th
queen.
straight draw, and that ties, I
Anand
believe,
Kasparov.
Anand Kasparov.
To me, it comes down to that move with Queen H5, how there's that awesome queen, I like to call it queen triangulation, that after Bishop G6, Queen H6, Rook F7, the line that you took us through several times.
Right here. This is where everybody liked Queen H5, yeah.
Because first
Bishop
you rejected it because you thought that this looked like white made no progress, right?
Right, and then on closer examination, it was sort of like, is this triangulation? What did I do?
It feels that way because like the queens, well, I guess to me, yeah, and then you put your queen on F3, and now it's like G4 is not possible. Actually, like I pushed your pieces back somehow.
Right, this bishop went backwards, this bishop went backwards, white's rooks took up central files and dominated.
But if you look at the path of the queen in the last few moves, it is a little weird, like an unusual pattern, right? Like the queen going from
absolutely.
The queen going from H3, I mean from H6
here to here.
Yeah.
To
back to there.
To here. All the way back to where we started from, right?
Yeah, and I wonder if that's like part of it, like that. I'm sure Fabi would appreciate all of the how great white was in the final position, but the queen path is just so unusual. Maybe it escaped him.
I don't think it escaped him might not be the right way. I think he might have even seen it and thought, "What? This is ridiculous. My queen's getting chased."
Like, what have I
Right,
achieved?
that's what I mean. Yeah.
Have I achieved? Have I successfully improved my position?
Right.
And perhaps he judged that he had not, but just again, if he had just stopped and thought about it, well, in fact, he had. This rook on F1 coming to E1 and then to E6 is a real accomplishment.
But the only thing he gained was rook E1. That's the funny part.
But the bishops are pushed back too.
I know.
Yeah, I know what you're
everything
saying.
he gained. I understand that part. I mean, I understand what
I
happened
know,
to black.
I know.
But what's funny is what black rearranged his pieces
as
thoroughly.
well.
He put his bishop on G6, he put his rook on F7, he put his bishop on F8. He got all those moves in that diagram you're showing there.
Right.
And
all you got is rook E1.
And all I got was rook E1. And he gets like, how did he get all those moves? He must have done something while I was doing all the.
Right.
But instead he go, well, you got all those moves, but they don't count for anything.
They really don't.
They're actually bad.
The rook on B8 is terrible. The queen on D8 hasn't moved. And so what? You've got the rook on F7. That might be a reasonably improvement. But none of the other pieces, and you're still facing D5.
It's
D6.
hilarious.
And you can't play,
it really
you can't
is
play
remarkable.
D4
And that's
anymore.
probably why he missed H3. I think, if anything, he saw his queen getting chased, or like, you know what? I don't want my queen to get chased. Let me just stop that.
Right.
And it
Let
seems
me
like
just
that was
play
what happened
H3
when he played rook
instead.
D1. He had a narrow path to having a better position.
Exactly.
Right? So it's funny that rook D1, even if technically compared to the computer engines, it wasn't a much worse move. Practically speaking, it turns out to be a much worse move.
It led
if you put the rook
to
E1,
inaccuracy, right?
Well, I'm not sure. If you put the rook in E1, did you have to be so razor precise to get a good position?
Maybe not, because
so
there's
sure.
no queen E8
Yeah.
anymore to deal with.
That's right.
Yeah, so you might have had a little
Rook's
more
already
leeway.
sitting on E1, stopping all that nonsense.
That's right. That's right. Wow. So we're about to see
By the way,
a repeat of.
By the way,
most
just to
draws.
make this
Yes?
point, so rook D1, bishop D6. I remember a variation that ran rook D1, bishop D6, queen H5.
All right, Queen H5. I'm sorry. Yes, Maurice?
Queen H5, Queen E8.
In this position?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Queen G5 check.
That is a pawn.
Queen G6.
Okay.
And you've gotten your pawn back as white.
Yes.
With a clearly much better position than you had in the game. And also you can start working him in this position, but it's not auto over.
Well, I mean, if you were to make a comparison between this ending, you could take with the pawn, and the game itself, I'm a big favorite to now take and put my bishop on f4. Pick up your pawn on f4, right? So I've already won one pawn back. I won your pawn on g5. But now I'm about to go a pawn ahead, and I'll still have the most important passer in the position.
Right. No, I'm not disagreeing with you about the position being better. I'm just saying the Queen E8 maneuver keeps creeping in.
Right.
Even if he wanted to play Queen H5, he has to stop and look at that.
Right.
But if you put the rook on E1, there are no maneuvers.
No Queen E8
right,
maneuvers.
No Queen E8, and you're just crying over there.
That's right.
Allowing this position to happen.
That's right.
Rook B1 was off, and mistakes came in pairs, as you said.
Exactly. Again, we're going to refresh it. We'll probably take a very short break, a shorter break, in fact.
Because you're thinking that this is going to be drawn any.
I feel that
a few more moves, maybe.
We're going to be in a halving of the Pointier Grandmastership.
Could I show you something else as well?
Please.
Look, just following this line. Rook to E1. This is how bad it is. Bishop D6, Queen H5. If you try that same nonsense like before,
okay.
Queen H6 threatening mate.
Yeah.
You guard the mate. Rook E6 and you resign.
Right. There's a mate on H8.
You just resign because Rook G6 is coming and you don't have Bishop F8. You just resign. That's how active the Rook on E1 was.
Exactly.
And Rook D1 was not.
Rooks belong on open files.
Open files. You could have just had a completely crushing position. This game would have been over already, basically. That's how bad the advantage. It was huge advantage. Black would have to scramble to try to figure out what to do as this position proceeded because Rook on E1 and it's just like, uh-oh.
Give me the numerical slips there, please, Maurice. Well, Rook E1 was favored by how many tenths of a pawn over Rook D1?
Well, I'll tell you, Rook E1, our engine is not as strong as Ceci.
Correct.
Ceci was up over 2.
Wow.
Right? Ceci was up over 2 with the move Rook to Rook A E1. Okay. It was just like, you're going to die.
2.00.
That's correct. Okay. You're going to just die in this position. Now, this engine took a while to catch up to Ceci's assessment. Okay. So it might take some time for it to really find out. So I don't think I'm going to give you a fair answer just on the fly. But this one right now is giving a 0.7 advantage to this move and giving a 0.3, it looks like, advantage. It's up there as well.
So
actually,
4/10 of a pawn?
It's actually liking this move just as equally as it likes Rook E1. Look at that.
Not even.
As I'm looking, as we're looking, oh no, now it's dropping. Oh, now it's dropping and saying not nearly as much of an advantage. So it takes some time for the engine to catch up and look at all the variations. Really unlike the supercomputer Ceci, which is looking at this position on every single move and found that mate in 36, for example, because it's so sharp. When this engine did not see the mate at all.
Right.
So it matters which engine you're using.
And then the next point was Bishop D6.
Now when you go to H3, you see the barometer drop like dramatically.
Okay, if you put Queen H5 on the board,
if you put Queen H5 on the board, it stays where it is. So I like
which
my
is like 1.0.
Oh no, it's still 0.8,
0.8,
0.7, thereabouts. Yeah.
I see.
No, it's not 1 point yet. It's still the Rook on D1 you're talking about.
Yeah, I'm talking about
with the Rook on D1.
And
so
H3.
Remember, White's not getting that same position anymore because we have the move Queen E8 now. Queen E8. We talked about this line.
Already.
Queen E8, Queen G6 takes. You wanted to play Knight C4 in this position. Rook D8, giving you this pawn back, but trying to make some blockade of this pawn, getting into one of those kinds of endgames. You do have something to play for, but it's starting to look more and more tenacious possibilities for defense. So, okay. He should not have played like this. He just should not have played like this. Rook E1 would have been a smashing victory, consistent with the move C5. Would have been just smashing, just amazing. Now, opportunity lost.
Okay. By the way, before we do go on break, we do see the move rook after king g8 as expected by Magnus. We're not seeing this move d6. We just saw instead rook on f1 to f6. The idea of Fabiano is that he's going to swing his rook, I believe, over to b6, which would protect the pawn on b2 while activating the rook and threatening rook takes b7. I think that black is out of the woods after a move like bishop c8 or even rook d2.
But the game might continue a
But
little
the
bit
game
as
might continue a
Bobby
little bit
sees
more.
if he can spin anything here.
Right,
But
just testing the waters a little bit.
he certainly could have a dozen moves
The waters
prior.
are fine.
And
The
we're going to
waters
come
are
back
fine.
with after a quick break to see how game
Game
8
8.
shakes out.
Welcome to the chess capital of the United States. The St. Louis Chess Campus, in the heart of the vibrant Central West End, has established itself as a premier global destination for chess and is comprised of 2 unique nonprofit institutions. The Chess Club and Scholastic Center of St. Louis is recognized as the top chess facility in the world and plays host to all major tournaments, including the U.S. Chess Championships and the Sinkfield Cup, one of the strongest chess tournaments globally. Tournaments are broadcast online to more than 150 countries, led by an expert commentary team of grandmasters. The Chess Club is an educational organization committed to promoting the game of chess, with a specific focus on bringing the benefits of chess to children throughout the St. Louis area. Research shows children who play chess exhibit improved analytical skills and increased confidence. The Chess Club is highly engaged with the local community, bringing scholastic chess programs to more than 100 schools, providing hundreds of classes each week. Directly across the street from the Chess Club is the World Chess Hall of Fame. This one-of-a-kind cultural institution invites visitors to experience chess in imaginative ways and is home to the U.S. and World Chess Halls of Fame. Cutting-edge exhibitions feature rare, historic chess artifacts paired with world-class art. Innovative programming explores the intersection of chess, art, and culture. Visitors can enjoy interactive programs designed around the exhibitions and monthly music in the galleries. The World Chess Hall of Fame is nothing you expect and everything you love. 3 different galleries and a premier gift shop highlight the culture, history, and creativity behind the game. Come visit, play chess, leave enriched. To learn more about the St. Louis Chess Campus, visit stlchesscampus.org.
Hello and welcome back to Today in Chess World Championship Edition. We have 3.5, but hey, wait, it's actually 4-4 as the game between Fabiano Caruana, which looked so promising for the American challenger, has been drawn in this bishops of opposite color endgame with one rook for each side. Yaz, what an incredible start to the game for Fabi, and what a
disappointment.
Yeah,
Let's
I mean, well, the disappointment could have been bigger. I mean, he could have lost, but
well, he always had the big edge. He always had the big edge. We went in today, and I tell you, here on set, I don't know what it was, but there was this feeling in the air.
Yeah.
That was that magical, like today was a day. We all felt it.
That's what
there
I
was
was
a special
telling
energy
everyone.
on the set, and we thought it was going to be decisive. We weren't 100% sure who was going to win, but we thought this was going to be the decisive game, and it looked like it could have been. What could have been turned into a woulda, coulda, shoulda. H2, H3, Fabi threw away a very large advantage, let Magnus escape, and now we are in the history books of 8 consecutive draws, tying a record that was established in 1995 between Garry Kasparov and Viswanathan Anand. Maurice, you were there to call that action as well.
I was, and the folks were clamoring for a victory. They were not happy with all those draws. There's some kind of records you don't want to break.
Right.
This is one of those records you don't want to break. The record of starting the record of futility for starting a world championship match. And so far, 8 straight draws, tying now Anand versus Kasparov. And I'm sure Anand and Kasparov are like, yeah, hurry up and draw this one so that we can be removed from the history books for that match. Just crazy. First of all, there wouldn't have been any question of the record if Magnus had just won game 1.
Right.
It would have been like many matches before, no record because we just win right away. Well, at least a record for no futility. Then the opportunity came to Fabi in that epic game 6 where he had the maiden 36, but everybody agrees he would have been checked for some kind of device if he had found that sequence. So that one he can be forgiven for. He can say, and he brushed it. He said, he brushed it off. He said, you know what? It was like a lucky moment, accidental win, if you will.
Right.
He will not have that excuse today. Be curious to see what he says about this one, because this was no accident, folks. This was just a straight screw up. He should have put the pedal to the metal and run Magnus Carlsen over, but instead he played a couple of tepid moves. Rook A D1 was first instead of Rook A E1, and then this move H3, and then it just all went up in smoke after Queen E8, Queen G6, and that was that. And it wasn't like Magnus did anything super genius. He just found a couple of good moves and got to his end game and drew the game. So as much as we're fans of Fabi, there's Team Fabi in the building, but we got to call it like we see it. This was a slip today by Fabiano Caruana.
No question. Thank you, Maurice. And definitely, Jennifer, I thought it was great preparation by Fabi. How big a time edge do we think that Fabi had at one time? Because you told me after 18 moves, he had gained time on the clock.
I think it was very significant, indeed. At least up to 38 minutes at some point.
Wow.
Big edge for Fabi today.
That's a big
in
edge.
The opening. And yes,
darn it.
It is hard to... I mean, obviously it's very disappointing as a Fabi fan to see how today went down, but there's also a positive way to look at it. That
why am I not surprised that you're going to go with the positive?
I'm ready for the spin.
Let's go.
I'm ready for the spin. Here we go.
Let's hear it, Jen.
Okay, let's go. You're the lobbyist. Let's tell it.
He's got great preparation. I mean, in many games he's out preparing.
He does.
Magnus.
He clearly is better prepared.
And that bodes well. And I like the idea that he's scaring Magnus off potentially to Sicilian, and forcing him perhaps into a territory that Team Fabi's prepared even more.
Let's hope so for that.
So chances for the next couple white games, I think that we're going to break the trend, and there's going to be something for white.
Here's the schedule that's remaining. This 4 games, Jennifer. We will be playing on Thanksgiving. On Thanksgiving, Caruana will be white, but it's game 9 tomorrow will be a free day. That Carlsen will be starting with the white pieces November 21st.
That's right. We are going to have a white with Magnus on Wednesday, and then Thanksgiving is going to be a big day as Fabi's going to get another crack with the white pieces.
Right, and that's where we both agree that we may not be seeing an open Sicilian.
You agree with me on that?
I think so. That E5, that this Magnus is not going to be very pleased with what happened, and the preparation was so great.
He's going to be scared off like a, shall I say, turkey? Scared off.
Turkey.
Run, run.
Final
just
thoughts.
called Magnus Carlsen a turkey?
Final thoughts, Maurice Ashley, Grandmaster
No, I'm
Maurice
talking about
Ashley.
Thanksgiving, guys.
Right.
He's going to be scared.
I'm not going to wade into those waters.
Right.
I got in enough trouble
take
with
a
Magnus.
drumstick.
But let me just say, today was opportunity missed, and this is not what you want to do in a World Championship match. He had Magnus dead to all rights. Better preparation, time on the clock, absolutely winning position. Just a devastating position after he played the great move, C5, and then he hesitated. If you want to win the World Championship match, you want to take it away from the guy with the crown, you've got to kick him when he's down. You've got to get it done. And today, Fabi did not get it done. And now he's going to have to face the psychological impact of knowing that he had this great position, that it was basically an easy win. I mean, it was going to be huge. Rook A1, let's not even make a fine point about it. Rook A1 and Magnus would have been in deep, deep trouble. And even Queen H5, still big trouble for him. But missing this move, and then missing the moves, and then playing this quiet move, he's going to have to go look at his folks, and somebody on that team is going to say, look, it's okay, it's okay, it's okay. And let's say it 100,000 times. And we know he's been taking up yoga. He's going to have to do some meditation and get his mind right, because Magnus knows he dodged a bullet today big time. And maybe he's even thinking, well, the guy's not ready for it yet. He's not ready to take my title, because it was on a silver platter for him, and he didn't do it. So let's hope that he rights the ship, gets his head straight, because this match has been one of those missed opportunities so far. What are we going to see in Game 9? I'm not even going to try to guess, because it's been crazy. But we'll be here to call it, as this match is getting more and more tense, and it's going to be all about, like Peter Leko said, all about the nerves.
That's right. Well, I think Magnus today, after being under big pressure, he did defend, and that's what we're finding again and again. One slip, and the other guy plays perfectly.
To hang in there. A big shout out. Thank you very much to Peter Leko for coming on our show and sharing with us his specialty, the Sveshnikov. It happened to be perfectly timed to have such a guest, and really he was marvelous. So big shout out. Thank you very much, Peter, for joining us. Hope you do it some more. Thank you all for joining us and sharing your day with us. We will be back the day after tomorrow.
We'll be back on Wednesday. That's the day before Thanksgiving. Big travel day, big party night.
That's right.
And big chess day.
And a big chess
for
day.
chess lovers, as we're going to see round 9 of the World Chess Championship.